Flow to the future. Melt barriers. Condense time. Dissolve distance. Lives streaming together. A pool of knowledge, thoughts, ideas. Innovation glows. Wisdom grows. Droplets make a roaring waterfall. Our future will flourish. Our future is flow.
The travel and tourism industry has dealt with crises in the past, but we are now embarking on a more choreographed path towards resilience. Resilience comes when we research, evaluate, and prepare. The Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center has taken leadership in this mission through academic rigor required to assist destinations as well as the travel ecosystem to take note of the importance in planning. Every crisis is different, but they fall into distinct categories. The Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center's focus is on threats that have the strongest impact on the travel sector: environmental disasters, climate and man-made, cultural, economic, and cybersecurity. Crisis management is not a topic the industry likes to discuss, thinking in some way it deters travel. But we have seen time and time again that eventually recovery occurs. We want recovery faster through less impact. What we're doing now is to change the narrative. By opening centers around the world, sharing case studies, best practices, and empirical data, we can influence planning cycles and ensure risk reduction through preparation. At the same time, we're building capacity through the youth at our country's best universities, who are at the core of the center's success through the research they provide. Our research informs policy and best practices across the world. These global challenges, and there will be more, need global responses. We are proud to announce new partnerships in our network and more to come. Through collaboration focused on the travel sector, we are striving to make the sector better prepared, more resilient, and thus impact millions of lives and livelihoods for the better.
Excellencies, honorable ministers, tourism leaders, those working in or connected to or researching the tourism space, invited guests, the media, and other shareholders and stakeholders in the tourism space, welcome to the inaugural Global Tourism Resilience Forum at Expo 2020 here in Dubai. I'm your moderator, Masters of Ceremony, Lloyd Waller, the Executive Director of the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center. Applause. On March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. For many of us in the tourism space, the moment that followed, the implementation and enforcement of health protocols by governments around the world, global disruptions in tourism and travel, loss of jobs, and the displacement of lives, closures of businesses, social unrest, demonstrations, and mental anguish. The last one I'm particularly fond of. These are just a few of the many disruptions that individuals have faced in the last 2 years as a result of COVID-19. But as we have seen, when tourism is in crisis, the world is in crisis. This is indeed the case today. Because of COVID-19, the world now knows something that we all knew. Tourism is an important part of global sustainability and development. Applause. Well, my speech says I'm expecting it, so I'm going with the speech. Despite this crisis, the world has also observed many individuals, groups, institutions, organizations, countries, even whole regions that have applied the tools of resilience and have managed to survive COVID-19 and in some instances thrive. This is why we're here today. The inaugural Global Tourism Resilience Forum at Expo 2020 in Dubai provides a space for tourism stakeholders to share our best practices and lessons learned in tourism resilience, particularly in the last 2 years. This space will examine tourism resilience ideas that will contribute significantly to helping destinations rebound quickly as well as to exit the pandemic safely. More importantly, this forum will help tourism stakeholders to prepare for the future, not just future pandemics, but other disruptions, terrorism, cyberterrorism, war or the threat of war, and as we can see, even the threat of war has served to undermine certain economies in specific parts of Europe. Climate change and political tensions. Today, therefore, represents the beginning of a movement to protect and future fit the global tourism space with the tools of tourism resilience. A movement that will begin a conversation about concepts, indicators, methodologies, and practical solutions to tourism resilience and rebuilding economies. And a movement that will champion the road to tourism resilience on February 17th, 2023 and beyond. This day will forever remind us and the world of the importance of tourism resilience and its indispensable field or role in global sustainability. I will now pause as we have a second and third presentation and allow the presentation to play.
Minister, colleagues, friends, It is my pleasure to share this message for the Global Tourism Resilience Forum on behalf of the WTTC. Thank you for continuing to prioritize resilience for our sector's future. Resilience is key, particularly in a sector that connects people and enriches so many lives. In fact, our sector supported the livelihoods of more than 330 million people in 2019. Due to COVID-19 mitigation measures, 62 million jobs were lost. While the pandemic has ripped through travel and tourism, our sector continues to come together to achieve recovery and build resilience. Forums like this and the work of WTTC's members around the world are great examples of that. As the voice of the global private sector, WTTC has prioritized sustainability because we know that we cannot be resilient if we are not inclusive and sustainable. This is our planet, and we have the responsibility and honor to care for it. We know sustainability is a priority for many of you, and we're encouraged by the idea of a Global Resilience Day. Let us continue to unite to ensure a resilient future for all. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Liz Ortiguera, CEO of Pacific Asia Travel Association, or PATA. PATA is pleased to support the Tourism Resilience for Global Sustainability Forum taking place on February 17, 2022, and the launch of Global Tourism Resilience Day. The event will seek to foster global collaboration among governments, thought leaders, and industry experts in an effort to enhance tourism resilience through innovative solutions, which is in line with our association's mission in acting as a catalyst for the responsible development of travel and tourism to, from, and within the Asia-Pacific region. PATA has always been an advocate for disaster risk reduction and recovery, from our recovery task force work in Indonesia after the 2002 Bali bombing and in Nepal after the earthquake in 2015, with our work in conjunction with GIZ and the United Nations Office on Disaster Risk Reduction to develop a multi-hazard risk management standard for hotels under the Hotel Resilient Initiative. And now we have just launched PATA's Tourism Destination Resilience Program, which supports our destinations in understanding the importance of destination management and how to identify the critical areas for resilience. Resilience is really the foundation for sustainability and a key to capacity building. Destination resilience is particularly relevant to the Asia-Pacific region to address the risks of climate change, over-tourism, and pollution, to name just a few examples. TDR examines all the necessary steps for destinations not only to react when a crisis such as COVID-19 happens, but to be prepared and have control over potential risks, crises, and changes. PATA's program includes how to assess risks, plan for emergencies, build financial, societal, and institutional capacities, make the most of marketing and technology in times of crisis, diversify the tourism offer, strengthen the local supply and demand, among many other solutions. Destination resilience requires a transformative, holistic, and multi-stakeholder approach. Involvement is key, not only from tourism stakeholders, but also health and safety, police and fire departments, environmental ministries, civil society, international organizations, and very importantly, the communities involved. This event, in line with our mission, allows us to work towards a more coordinated cooperation between all industry stakeholders and across continents. Working together, we can build a more resilient, responsible, sustainable, and stronger travel and tourism industry. Thank you.
Now I get it why, no, not my favorite. Donald Trump would often go. So now I really get it. Thank you very much to PATA and the WTTC for their endorsements. Endorsements will be very critical going forward. As you know, the road or the journey to any day, which is this day's Global Tourism Resilience Day, will require a series of meetings and consultations and forums and documentations with the United Nations General Assembly in particular, as well as some of their bodies. And we look forward to it and encourage anyone else in here who is a part of an organization who wants to be a part of this movement to signal to us that, you know, you want to be on board on this journey. And this train cannot leave you, because this is a life-changing, world-changing phenomena that's happening here. I would like to invite to the stage Dr. Taleb Rifai, former Secretary-General of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, co-chair and co-founder of the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center. Dr. Rifai.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. أهلا وسهلا بكم جميعا. I can speak my native language here in Dubai. It's wonderful to be in Dubai. Dubai is the capital of so many things that are happening, especially Dubai 2020. We're in 2022, but we're still celebrating 2020 here in Dubai. I was never meant to be in tourism. I got my degree in architecture and urban planning. I headed a cement company and developed trade to Jordan, my home country. Life was casting along. Then I was asked to be in the global investment promotion for Jordan. So I developed investment promotion corporation, investment strategy. And I guess that led me to become, because within 1 year I was brought into government, first to be Minister of Communication and Planning. By 2020, by 2001, tourism was added to my portfolio. Thereafter followed my role as Secretary-General of UNWTO. Tourism has changed my life for sure. Through the lenses of my personal life, I strive to create opportunity and change in the life of others through tourism. I believe tourism can change people's life in an incredible way, knowing that it's an invigorating field that crosses so many boundaries and limitless opportunities. When you travel the world, you become a better person. I travel the world, I'm a better person for sure. Thus, in co-chairing with Minister Bartlett on the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center, as well as the Global Travel and Tourism Resilience Council, I'm able to see the incredible value of these organizations bring to bear for the travel industry. The idea that in just a few years, the GTRCM has grown from an idea to a network, and doing its job fantastic. Minister Bartlett's vision has led us to a place where real things are happening through action on the ground, and not just influencing or advocacy. That is incredibly important as we work to force disrupting in the industry, disenchantment and disengagement from our youth that I'm not part of anymore, through expansion of these centers with the university's engagement on the spotlight upon youth, to be impressed by the academic rigor, opportunities to travel, to innovate, to explore cultures while breaking through barriers and yet learning from the value of the predecessors. We have to agree that tourism is an industry of peace. It is crystal clear to me that the development of international expansion of these centers, which we will hear from much about today, are playing and will play a vital role for the decades to come. I thank you all for sharing this moment with me, this wonderful place called Dubai 2020. Thank you so much. Shukran jazaak. Shukran.
Thank you very much, Dr. Taleb Rifai. Your enormity in the tourism space, your generosity, your humility, and your crusade for an inclusive tourism and a tourism that can bring about change and peace is legendary, especially in a world where many persons who are not in the tourism space believe that this is all prestidigitation. And I'm very happy to be affiliated and associated with your work and your legacy, Dr. Rifai. Thank you very much. I would now like to invite Minister Balala, Minister of Tourism for Kenya, to the stage. Minister Balala.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting Kenya to this stage. And yes, my President Uhuru Kenyatta, was at the Dubai Expo yesterday. He had to leave and go to Brussels for some European Union events. And I'm here today to read his speech as quoted. Your Excellencies, the Right Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, Dr. Taleb Rifai, the Global Resilience Center and Crisis Management Chairman and founder and former Secretary-General of UNWTO, Honorable Edmund Bartlett, Minister of Tourism of Jamaica, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, accept warm greetings from the people of the Republic of Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, the Global Tourism Resilience Forum marks the milestone in the efforts to build resilience in the tourism sector. Following a period when the sector faced unprecedented challenges, the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted all economies and globally, with tourism being the hardest hit. The tourism industry is one of the key economic pillars for many countries. The strong forward and backward linkages. The disruption of this sector has therefore adversely affected other sectors, especially the food sector, and thus leading to losses of livelihood for millions of people worldwide. Distinguished guests, to curtail the spread of COVID-19, countries across the globe had to limit both domestic and international travel, change how tourism industry operates, and introduce new guidelines and protocols that rightly prioritize the safety and health of tourists, operators, and citizens. Going forward, this forum presents a good opportunity to choose a new direction and adopt a more sustainable path that builds a more resilient tourism economy, both during and post the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the time to rethink and come up with a transformative strategy that will sustain the desired recovery of the tourism industry. Key elements of that strategy would include promotion of digital transition, adoption of greener tourism system, and rethinking of the domestic tourism as a springboard for the international tourism component. The survival of businesses throughout the tourism ecosystem is at risk. Although government have taken impressive measures to cushion the blow to tourism, to minimize job losses, and to build recovery in 2021 and beyond. More needs to be done, and in more coordinated manner. To support recovery in the tourism sector, governments and the tourism stakeholders will have to restore travelers' confidence, support accessibility and equity in vaccination for all, promote domestic tourism and support the safe return of international tourism, provide clear information to travelers and businesses and limit uncertainty, support tourism businesses to adopt and survive, and finally, strengthen cooperation within and between countries. While flexible policy solutions are needed to enable the tourism sector to survive alongside the virus in the short and medium term, it is also important to look beyond today and to take notes to learn from the crisis. This crisis has revealed gaps in both government and the industry preparedness and response capacity. Coordinated actions across governments at all levels and also within the private sector is indeed essential. Governments need to consider the longer-term implication of the crisis while capitalizing on the digitalization, supporting low-carbon transition, and promoting the structural transformation needed to build a stronger and more sustainable and more resilient tourism economy. Distinguished guests, all our tourism destinations and activities are weather dependent and thus climate change sensitive. It is therefore very likely that the climate change will affect tourism sooner than later. As we rebuild a resilient tourism, we cannot afford to ignore the basic truth that the future of tourism industry is closely linked to climate change crisis. As we continue to advocate for resilience and innovation, the strategy we adopt to achieve and sustain the recovery of this sector must be aligned to the clean energy, transportation, and other climate change mitigation measures in place. Ladies and gentlemen, sustainable and resilient tourism, therefore, should harmonize with the environment. Hence, reduction of carbon emission, limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, promote the safeguarding of our cultural and natural heritage, protect livelihoods, benefit local communities, and respond to the changing expectations that are emerging from sustainable behaviors being adopted by both businesses and consumers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my sincere hope that the lessons that we gain from today's deliberation in this forum will enable us to address the numerous challenges that face the tourism industry across the world, both at present and at foreseeable future. I take this opportunity to laud the government of United Arab Emirates for a well-organized Dubai Expo 2020. It is a mark of their prioritization of resilience and their commitment to sustainable tourism recovery. The diversity of the representation in this forum is indeed a testimony that we all want to create a sustainable global tourism industry that makes our economies thrive. Let me also congratulate the Global Resilience and Crisis Management Center under the chairmanship of Dr. Taleb Rifai, the former Secretary-General of World Tourism Organization, and Honorable Edmund Bartlett, the Minister for Tourism of Jamaica. I also like to thank, I also like to thank Honorable Najib Balala, Cabinet Secretary of Tourism and Wildlife in Kenya, and the entire Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center fraternity for their commendable efforts and advocacy of global tourism resilience and setting up of the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center satellite at Kenyatta University, Kenya. The launch of the first Tourism Resilience Day in 2022. Lastly, I want to extend a warm welcome to you all to magical Kenya, a destination that is safe for all, with pristine white sandy beaches, over-fabled coral reefs, diverse flora and fauna, and the game parks and the safari destinations that are home to the legendary Big Five. All are set along our modern and bustling metropolitan areas. We cordially invite you to experience the hospitality of our people, our cultural diversity, and the magic that is embedded in every aspect of Kenya. I thank you.
Just a note for those who came while Minister Balala was speaking. When he referred to himself in the third person, he was actually reading a speech. It wasn't mental anguish, if you thought that was the case. Our next presenter honestly needs no introductions, but I may not be able to have a job tomorrow, so I have to go and I have to do my job. You know, in 2016, I was introduced to Minister Bartlett, and to work with him as a senior advisor, I quickly took the job because, you have a PhD, work with the United Nations. I'm going to go and teach them something. It turns out that I was a student, and I have been learning at his feet from 2016 to even 16 minutes ago. And that is Minister Bartlett, the person who you don't want to sit beside on the airplane, because you know he's so passionate about tourism that he will start to talk about tourism in the lounge before the plane takes off, and then continue the dialogue when the plane lands. That's passion for you. That's Minister Bartlett for you. Honorable Minister Bartlett, please join me up here. The stage is yours.
I'm not sure if I should thank you, Professor Waller, or send you a note. Welcome, Excellencies, partners, members of the trade and private sector, and members of the cyber world who are connected with us today in every continent in the world. It is a wonderful feeling, indeed, to see all of you here on this side of the world, in particular, from my little beautiful nation, the finest pearl of creation, Jamaica. Jamaica may be small, but we have a loud voice, and you will hear it today. Virtue indeed is better revealed in action than in theory. Diogenes told us that in 400 BC, and it remains true today. The same message we hear in modern times, that actions speak louder than words. So action is why we're here. The pandemic has highlighted societal weaknesses which show themselves vibrantly within the travel sector. We are here to not only raise the global consciousness about resilience, but to bring forth actions that demonstrate what can be done and is being done to prepare to be resilient. But I would like to indicate that speaking about these things without also thanking those who have built the road before us would be a little remiss. And I don't intend to be in that space at this time. So I'd like to pause to reflect on 2016 and 2017 a little bit, when I attended an event in London hosted by Jacobs Media Group about preparedness and crisis management, and where the idea of building capacity to deal with crisis was expressed, and I was asked almost at the very last moment. I wasn't even part of the planning arrangement, but somebody fell out and I fell in. And in falling in, we became a part of that discourse. And at that session, I called for regional crisis management centers to respond to the requirement of highly tourism-dependent countries that were weakly resourced to respond to crisis, to bounce back quickly, and to thrive. So I came back home, and we were having, at the time, the closing of the World Tourism Sustainable Development celebrations. And Jamaica hosted the historic conference on tourism sustainability and job creation. And it happened that within that space of time, 3 of the most catastrophic weather events took place in the Caribbean. 1 Hurricane Maria, which devastated Antigua and Barbuda, leaving Barbuda as a piece of rock in the middle of the ocean. Destroyed 90% of the GDP of Dominica. And then afterwards, a second hit Puerto Rico. In the frame of that, we had our conference in Jamaica. And the call was made then by way of the Declaration of Montego Bay, which called for 3 points of action. 1, the establishment of a crisis-resilient management center to create an institutional framework for academic rigor and for study and for mining of data and communication, and to be able to offer to the world community guidance as to how to, 1, identify disruptions. Secondly, to mitigate against disruptions. Thirdly, to manage disruptions when they actually come. And fourthly, to recover quickly. And fifthly, to thrive. And those 5 critical pillars informed the establishment of the first ever Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center at the University of the West Indies at Mona in Jamaica. Professor Waller, our chair for this evening, I asked to help us to establish the center and become the first executive director. Dr. Rifai was steadfast by my side throughout all of this, and his considerable experience brought so much energy, resource, and capacity to our efforts. The Resilience Council was formed, and Daniela, who is with us today, is the architect of that process. And along with Laurie and the other teams, our bulwark of support in getting the message across the world through various fora that have been happening across many countries. And the goodness of God has been with us. So we have shared so much over that period, and it has been exciting. So certainly, since we have had many supporters and partners, many of whom you have heard from today, I will not detain you by saying every single one, but to indicate that our first venture outside of Jamaica was to Kenya. And it came after a visit of His Excellency, the President of Kenya, to Jamaica. And we discussed a memorandum of understanding for cooperation in tourism and tourism areas and the establishment of a crisis management and resilience center at the Kenyatta University in Nairobi. And in 2019, December, we achieved that objective. And I visited the center late last year. And forgive me for this personal indulgence, But the Vice Chancellor of the university proclaimed that I was a prophet. And I agreed that a prophet is without honor save in his own country. And he said the reason being that you came in December 2019 to inaugurate this Resilience Center, and by March of 2020, the world declared a pandemic. I don't want to visit anybody else's country after that. So we have worked, and that center has now provided leadership in East Africa and the Indian Ocean. And I'm proud to say that at a later point today, we are going to be inaugurating other centers through Memoranda of Understanding, which we will sign. And on Sunday the 20th, we will inaugurate the first center in the Middle East at the Middle East University in Amman. Today, therefore, in attempting to declare the World Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Day, we want to focus on capacity building primarily for small, highly tourism-dependent nations that are vulnerable to many disruptions, but are weakly resourced to respond effectively to it. So many countries have had various types of disruptions and have not recovered, but indeed have receded. And that recession has made human degradation and poverty escalate, and the insecurity of the family of human beings escalating. Let us use this day, the 17th of February, 2022, in the frame of Expo 20 in this beautiful country of the Emirates in general and Dubai specifically, to make that statement that the world will now have a chance to predict, mitigate, manage, recover, and recover quickly, and then thrive after disruptions. I thank you.
Minister is being a little humble, so I will speak on his behalf in this regard quickly. When Minister Bartlett had conceptualized the GTRCM, there were many who believed that the organization could not have been implemented within a year, much less to have over 6 satellite centers by the end of this month globally. So it now represents a global think tank on tourism resilience and global sustainability, which is a phenomenal outcome from a conference that we had in 2017. So, Minister, congratulations. Those of us in here who have worked at an international organization, especially one of the older ones like the United Nations, recognize that this is indeed a great feat. And I'd like to thank the Excellencies for their great presentation. We now move to the virtual parts of the program with our first presenter, our first video from Dr. Abu Ghazali. It's queued up? Okay.
Excellencies and honorable colleagues, I am humbled to be among you and to address you. Thanks to my honorable friend, His Excellency Minister Taleb Rifai, and to the Right Honorable Edmund Bartlett for inspiring me. During my term as chair of the United Nations Information and Telecommunication Technologies Task Force, I had the privilege to participate in the formulation of the MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, which were to be achieved by 2015. And in my capacity as co-chair of the UN Global Network on promoting digital technologies for sustainable urbanization, in 2015, I attended also the consultations for the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, to be achieved by the year 2030. I sincerely believe that the UN needs to launch similar consultations on the threat of climate change, the greatest threat to humanity that is ever to happen, and the threat to, of course, to tourism worldwide. I don't want you to underestimate and even compare it to COVID-19. COVID-19 is nothing compared to what we're facing in future as a result of climate change. Unfortunately, whether for the SDGs or for the MDGs, not much have been achieved because you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And I need to see some measurement because I'm talking about this climate change and the UN role in relation to the greatest threat, not just to humanity, but to trade and to tourism. Now, I was mandated by the UN Secretary-General also to draft international accounting standards for environmental accountability, which I drafted with representatives of accountancy associations worldwide and submitted it to the SG in 1999. I did that in my capacity at that time as chair of the United Nations Working Group of Experts on International Standards of Accounting and Reporting, UNISAR. Unfortunately, the proposal was not approved because of the sensitivity of its impact, the impact of these standards of control on contribution to pollution, the sensitivity of its impact on the US industry, which is understandable. Therefore, I want to make the following statements. One, we need to call on GTRCMC to establish a Global Challenges Trade Institute. I'm not talking about sustainability and I'm not talking about resilience. I'm talking about forecasting, predicting, and proposing action to prevent and preempt climate change damages as well as other challenges. Second, we need to move from goals, the daily MDGs, we moved from MDGs to SDGs. Now we need to move to preemption. Wisdom tells us that the best way to predict the future is to make it happen. And perhaps we can start this process by holding by WTO, our great tourism organization, to start the process by holding UN-hosted consultations for a UN Global Compact on Climate Changes, UNGCC. Learning from our experience on the UN Global Compact, which I established with His Excellency Kofi Annan and co-chaired it with him, and subsequently I continued to co-chair it with His Excellency Ban Ki-moon. That was in 2006 to 2008. I'm saying this because this global compact is only a one-page, 10 goals that needs to be measurable and achievable. Now, having served on the World Tourism as a special ambassador, thanks to His Excellency Taleb Rifai, and simultaneously by having served at the same time on the board of experts of the World Trade Organization, WTO, our similar acronym, WTO. I realized that they're confusing these two acronyms is very meaningful, because in my view, trade is tourism and tourism is trade in more than one way. And I can explain that when the time is available. Accordingly, I propose that you study joint action with the World Trade Organization in drafting a set of principles similar to those of the UN Global Compact. I thank you for listening, and with great respect, I support you and salute you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Taleb Abu. And we now have another presentation or greetings from the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica and Regional Chair of the GTRCM.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The recovery of the global tourism industry is a critical determinant of the overall pace of global economic recovery, particularly among the most tourism-dependent regions of the world, including the Caribbean. The COVID-19 pandemic has presented an opportunity for all industry stakeholders to collaborate more closely to identify best practices, strategies, and innovations that will promote the recovery of the industry from the current crisis and build overall resilience for the future. Although the scale and impact of COVID-19 was unprecedented, there will no doubt be other significant challenges that the industry will face, including those posed by climate change. This necessitates a posture that understands the various threats to the industry and the need for a proactive approach to enhancing readiness and capacity to meet the challenges of the present and the future. Significant catalysts of the fairly impressive pace of the recovery of the tourism sector include strong political leadership, innovations and technologies, as well as the adoption of sound principles of crisis management. The pandemic has offered very valuable insights about the future needs, expectations, and challenges of the tourism industry. It has led to the emergence of a new ethos, attitudes, and thinking about destination assurance, destination attractiveness, and security in the post-COVID-19 era. The pandemic has taught us important lessons so far. Among them is the need for greater and more active commitment to behavioral changes among all involved in the tourism value chain to reduce environmental, social, and human health risks. Indeed, it is anticipated that the more international tourists will opt for sustainable destinations in the post-COVID era. Destinations that fail to reorient themselves towards meeting the demands for sustainability are likely to be left behind. The increased demand for a more sustainable brand of tourism presents an opportunity to prioritize the responsible use of natural resources, the preservation of the cultural assets of the host countries, and the strengthening of local involvement and participation in the tourism value chain. Decades of experience with cyclical crises and the current prolonged crisis have generated accumulated wisdom about the needs and challenges of the industry. This accumulated wisdom must become the toolkit that tourist destinations across the world use to safeguard their future. The task of resilience building is especially urgent for regions and sub-regions with a high degree of tourism dependence. In keeping with this renewed thrust towards a more resilient and sustainable tourism industry, I commit my unequivocal support to any engagement, initiative, or project that seeks to bring intellectual, scientific, innovative, and entrepreneurial minds and energies together for the purpose of sharing and exchanging resources to solve common problems facing the industry. Accordingly, the convening of a conference to focus on tourism resilience is perhaps now more fitting than at any other point in the history of the tourism industry. The Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center must be commended for conceptualizing and coordinating this important initiative. I am confident that policy, ideas, strategies, frameworks, and models of tourism resilience building will be identified to aid current efforts towards recovery, as well as to chart a more positive future for the industry and the millions of global citizens whose lives and livelihood depend on tourism.
That was the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, President of Jamaica. I would now like to invite Mr. Gerald Lawless to the stage. Mr. Lawless will be our moderator for this particular section, which looks at governments and how they managed COVID-19. Mr. Lawless, I understand it.
Co-moderator, please. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and we're hoping that our technology will work and we'll get our other participants as well coming on. But I would like to start by asking Their Excellencies Sir Edmund Bartlett and Mr. Balala to please, if they wouldn't mind taking a seat alongside Professor Waller, who's going to sit here to back me up with our questions as we go. So if you would like to sit, I think that if one of you would sit here. Thank you, sir. And thank you very much. And yeah, no, you sit wherever you like. Yeah. Thank you. And there is a control room downstairs that is linking in to a number of other speakers who will be joining us. The Honourable Philba Narla-Kering, Minister of Environment, Natural Resources, Conservation and Tourism of the beautiful country of Botswana. And then we have the President of the Jordan Tourism Board, His Excellency Abdel Raza Al Bayat, who will hopefully be joining us too. And Senator the Honourable Lisa Cummins, Minister of Tourism and International Transport of Barbados and Chair of the Caribbean Tourism Organisation. So this afternoon we're going to have what I hope will be dialogue, interaction between the participants to discuss enabling resilience and sustainability to accelerate the recovery of the global tourism industry. And I really do believe that this tourism industry is recovering in many ways in a natural fashion, in that people love to travel. People like to go places, people want to do it. And I always quote Dr. Rifai when he says, travel and tourism is a force for good. And truly it is. It does a lot of good for people. It's good to go away. And hey, you know, it's no harm if you want to go to a busy beach and just lie down and enjoy yourself and relax. What I believe very strongly is that travel and tourism should give people who participate in it a sense of enrichment, that when they finish their holiday or their travel, that they really feel they have done some good, not just for themselves. But as a long-term resident of Dubai, I first came here in 1978, which I still have grey hair even then, so it doesn't really matter. But you know, we have seen how people have come here, how tourism and travel has grown to be the pandemic days into Dubai alone of 19 million visitors a year. We've seen what the provision of an airline like Emirates Airlines, which started in 1985, we've seen what it can do. I serve on the board of the Ras Al Khaimah Tourism Development Authority, and later we'll be hearing from Mr. Raki Phillips, the CEO. Here we can see how people now enjoy the mountains, enjoy the beaches, and really enjoy very much being part of a visit to the United Arab Emirates. This is also a great business location, a great place to come. And one of the areas that I would like to discuss this afternoon is the value and the benefit of public-private cooperation in relation to our industry. And certainly, I think we have a lot to say about that, and very good examples, I'm sure, will come from our panelists this afternoon. But it is really important. And just to finally use again an example of the United Arab Emirates, an example of Dubai tourism, of Ras Al Khaimah and Abu Dhabi tourism, how the public-private sector have always worked together with the Department of Tourism and the private sector. This has worked, it continues to work, and to me it is vital in developing resilience for all of us. As our participants have already said, resilience is very much about planning, about predicting, about what we can do, having our crisis plan in place. So I'm not sure exactly who we've got online at the moment, but hopefully we will be able to start as well. And I would like to ask, who have we got? Because it's very hard to see from here. Minister Philba Kering? Is she on? Yeah. She's there, right? So, Minister Philba Kering, can you hear me?
Listen.
No, she's not Barbados.
Sorry, Lisa.
And that's Honourable Lisa Cummings.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. But it's very hard to see here with the light is reflecting on that. Could you please tell us a little bit about what's happening in relation to resilience, in relation to tourism in Barbados, and how you see the evolution and development of the process there?
Thank you. First, I'd like to recognize the extraordinary work that has been done by the organizers of this event and with the establishment of centers. Minister Bartlett, my Caribbean colleague, has been exemplary. And I would want to, first of all, recognize the extraordinary work that he has done in collaboration with all of the partners to be able to get us to having this kind of discussion around tourism and tourism resilience. Now, here in Barbados, it was interesting to hear Minister Bartlett in his introductory comments when he spoke about what happened in 2016 and the impact of Hurricane Maria across the region. Here in the Caribbean region in particular, and I speak now wearing the hat of the Minister of Tourism for Barbados, as well as the chairman of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, where we have member states all across and associate member states all across the Caribbean basin. And we would have dealt, as the world did, with the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact on not just our tourism sector, but the resulting impact on our domestic economies. And that would have been a significant amount of damage done to our domestic economies as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, not just because of the pandemic itself, but because, as Minister Bartlett said earlier, we are a highly tourism dependent region, and the Inter-American Development Bank released a body of work which spoke about tourism risk management and created a risk index, which put 21 countries in the Caribbean basin, independent countries, as well as those that are dependent countries of other nations, at the top of the list of those that were most vulnerable as a result of the high level of dependence on the tourism sector. So we have that happening. When you add that during the course of this year, certainly in the case of at least 2 of our member countries, we also had a volcano erupting, which then resulted both in a direct impact from the volcano and then the indirect impact from the ash which spewed and affected 3 or 4 neighboring countries. And then, of course, we had a hurricane which affected specifically Barbados. This is the definition in 1 year of what vulnerability looks like and what risk management must look like, and the impact that we must as a region plan for in tourism resilience. And it is for that reason that we give our full support as a region and as a CTO to the GTRCMC and to the importance of empirically based decision making, the research that is necessary for us to be able to manage, respond to, and emerge from these crises, but more importantly, to be able to put mechanisms in place through our development partners, including those, tourism is trade and trade is tourism, and to put mechanisms in place with our partners, including the UNWTO, the World Trade Organization, the various UN development agencies, including the UNDP, all of those who have had to respond in very different ways, World Bank, IMF, to the crisis affecting tourism-dependent economies. And I'll start there in terms of the macro view, and over the course of my comments throughout the forum, I'll then zoom in a little bit on what's happening here in Barbados and what we have then been able to respond to.
Thank you very much, Minister Cummins. Thank you for those remarks, and well done for everything you're achieving in the beautiful island of Barbados, which I've visited many times. Well, Dr. Abdul Razak, you're with us?
Yes, sure.
And perhaps we could hear from you, especially with all the exciting developments that are happening in Jordan. I always think that Jordan has so much to offer as a tourism destination, from Jerash in the north, or north of Amman, to Petra in the south, to Amman itself. You must be very proud to represent such a fabulous tourism destination and a great country.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. And thank you about the nice words about Jordan. So you are helping us to promote the country. Talking about what we did so far for our sector, especially under the name of the most important key phase now post-COVID is the resilience. From the beginning of the pandemic, we believe that we need to have our sector protected by establishing a resilience fund. As you know, many of the sectors been affected, lockdowns, there is no business, and especially in Jordan, we depend heavily on the tourism, 14% of the GDP. So it's very important, very dangerous if you are not supporting the sector. The number one sector part, contributing to the Central Bank of Jordan in terms of the foreign currency. So it was from the beginning, we recognized the importance to have this resilience strategy, and by taking extra measures, decisions to protect the sectors, the hotels, all the supply chain in Jordan. One of the things that we did during the pandemic, issuing the resilience fund, where we giving soft loans for the all these tourism suppliers. Also, many decisions have been made to maintain and to support. Especially, we've noticed that when you travel to many countries that the service quality is down, because a lot of them, they left their jobs and they moved to another sectors. But and we recognize from the beginning that we need to maintain that. Once the rebound, once we come back and the tourism come back after the corona, we need them there just to cater and serve our guests. So the government did a great job in terms of the programs that supported part of the salaries of the workforce in Jordan with the Social Security Association. We just postponed a lot of loans with the bank. We just waived a lot of taxes and postponed many other. So a lot of measures have been taken in the ground just to support and to make sure that we need to make this sector resilient and strong once the tourism come back. And all the officials here in Jordan, and by the direction of His Majesty the Crown Prince, that we need to support and to protect the tourism sector. That's why the government last year identified the tourism sector as one of the priorities. So they give us more budget to do marketing, to have more activities in the targeted markets, to come quickly, very fast, go to 2019 numbers, so we can protect and to revive and make sure that all the supply chain is working and back to normal. And we discovered actually during the COVID-19, we have the informal sector where a lot of workforce just working as service providers, product providers, like the people of the workforce that are working in the souvenirs and the handcrafts. They are not registered because they are working from home. Many of these families suffered during the pandemic, but we discovered them and we took care of them by giving them support, soft loans, and to make sure that once the tourism come back, they are there. We don't want to lose them. So the workforce, the human resource, is a very important element in the tourism formula.
Absolutely. No, absolutely, Doctor. And we'll come back to that because I think it's such a huge area to discuss and it's really, really important. And I will definitely come back to it. But if I may ask at this stage to ask our panelists here in the hall this afternoon, and with Minister Balala, we talk a lot, and I think we talk to ourselves a lot about great tourism is, but we must have learned lessons about what we didn't do so well in some of the last crises. And where could we work better to really achieve the level of resilience that we aspire to so that we have this good recovery in our industry?
Well, thank you very much, Gerald. The problem is that we not only learn the lessons of previous crises, but the problem is we didn't build capacity to be resilient for what's going to come. And that has been the biggest problem. When life comes back to normal, we forget about creating a resilience fund so that it can be able to look what will come next. In fact, if you think COVID pandemic is the end of it, not yet. There'll be another pandemic. And as you see, it mutated. It was first COVID-19, the virus B, there was Delta virus, Omicron. So it continues. And this pandemic is not going to be the last one, the health pandemic. Then there's the environmental crisis. Yes. Climate change is another one. Have we built capacity to be resilient? That's the key thing. I think here, part of the resolutions of today is to establish a resilient fund so we can be able to build capacity, also mitigate from the challenges going to come for the future.
Great, because then I would ask Minister Bartlett to comment. We've heard so often during the course of the pandemic, you know, why can't governments come together? Why is every European Union nation acting independently? Why in the United Kingdom do you have England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland with their different procedures and everything? So, you know, when we talk about, wow, we can get a fund together, they can hardly get their act together to actually coordinate what is happening under, for example, the World Health Organization. I wonder, would you like to comment, Minister Bartlett?
Yeah, well, I think that's a very key set of questions that you ask, and they are remaining unanswered primarily because of the one factor that the human family has not yet been able to manage well, and that's selfishness. Mm-hmm. And, you know, countries have not learned to respond together to global actions.
Yes.
And the pandemic is a good example of this. Indeed, initially, we all came to understand that we have to rely on science to tell us exactly what this phenomena is. Right. Then we all learned to understand that we need to manage through data, that we need to get data and to analyze the data and to use the data to guide a set of actions. And then we learned, thirdly, that those sets of actions could be called something named protocols. So we developed protocols. And then after that, we again went to science to ask, what's the anecdote? And science says we have no anecdote, but we have some vaccine that will help you to build immunity and to manage this process a little better so that you're not likely to get into the extreme situations. And guess what we did? We decided that the vaccines were for us and not for all. And we got into a big problem with the whole issue of how do we now distribute that and how do we help the world to recover together rather than for me to recover in my space and leave everyone else behind.
So you would say the development of the vaccination must have been a fantastic achievement for science and technology, but the subsequent distribution was a disaster.
Absolutely. And so we established that the world required a certain timeline to distribute the vaccine to cover a percentage to enable normality.
Indeed.
And what did we have? We have a situation where 10% of the world had 80% of the vaccine.
Yes.
And even today, when several strains have come and gone, and more to come, a sizable portion of the world is still less than 20%.
And would you think that that sizable proportion of the world that hasn't had access, like the developed world, the developing world, perhaps we don't hear about so many cases, but perhaps as well because they don't have the infrastructure to do the testing and to look after their people? What would you say?
Well, the fact is that the rate of recovery to normalcy, which means the economic activity returning to areas, are conditional on the level of vaccination and the extent to which the protocols have been applied. Now, all of those are factors, too, that influence death, hospitalization, and overall recovery. So where we find that the drive for my recovery supersedes the drive for our recovery, the world has been put back. And that's the issue. That's the real issue. So what we really want to say out of this is that resilience building for recovery should not be selfishly carried through.
Because it's to the value of the whole world to make sure that we do distribute on it.
Because we all will recover if everyone is included in the recovery process.
Thank you, Minister. Now I'm going to ask Professor Waller a question. You lecture, you talk to young people all the time. We hear from young people, this is going away now from the pandemic, that actually travel and tourism is not the force for good that Dr. Rifai and I believe so strongly, and I'm sure everybody else in the room. And most of it comes around sustainability, climate change, carbon emissions. And do you find that this is something that is really beginning to make people think, you know what, I might not travel because I don't think travel is right for the environment?
So yes and no. So on one hand, you would have those who we would consider as responsible travelers. They're more aware of the environment, their own environments. They consider themselves to be enlightened and and everything that they do is towards protecting the environment. Those are the travelers that you speak about who will be very preoccupied with climate change, be very preoccupied with how individuals are treated in the tourism space, the workers themselves, about fair trade in the tourism space. So there are those categories of persons, and I'm just speaking anecdotally now, based on the data that I have. And then there are those who are joyriders. You know, it doesn't really matter for them the impact on the environment. The important thing is them, you know, and the fun that they get out of it, and the opportunity that they get to spend their parents' funds or what they have saved up. But there is no respect for the environment. And the good thing about it, though, I've been monitoring this particular challenge, and I realize that there's some convergence where there's a middle ground, where you have another set who still want to have fun, but are still cognizant of how that fun can impact their own lives and the lives of the persons who live in the destinations and the overall country itself.
But you would agree that a person who works in a factory in the northeast of England is also entitled to go for a bit of R&R, a nice time on the beach in the south of Spain.
Agreed.
And surely they're as entitled to enjoy that as somebody who can afford a villa in the Maldives.
I agree. For the most part, it has a lot to do with level of education, access to information, and as well as the parents' and the parents' value systems.
Thank you. Now we have the Honorary Philba Karen, the Minister of Environment, Natural Resources, Conservation and Tourism from Botswana. Welcome, Minister. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And I know we spoke earlier about, what really matters for Botswana. What do you want to say about your country in relation to resilience, in relation to global travel tourism resilience centres, and how are we going to go forward to manage future crises, and how we are going to cope with what really drives tourism within a country like Botswana?
Welcome to Botswana. I think we have passed the stage of dwelling on the impacts of COVID-19, that all of us know how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the tourism sector. And we have also started the movement towards tourism recovery across the globe, which emphasizes for us as Botswana, and I think as all the countries, two things that are very critical. We keep containing COVID pandemic, then we build towards resilience of the sector and the entire economy, for sustainable, survival. And then we build the necessary capacities for us to, actually implement sustainable tourism, which is now the way to go. Resilience and building resilience are key to attaining this. And I want to share with you that in terms of the Botswana story, I'll round up by sharing with you what we are ready for in terms of welcoming investors to come and build the resilience with us here. We have managed to contain the COVID-19 pandemic, being one of the Africa's leading countries in terms of COVID responses, in terms of vaccination, and in terms of the packages that we have actually implemented in cushioning the sector, the standard operating procedures in which and through which we have been able to ensure that the tourism sector has remained COVID proven, COVID-proof, as I like saying. So coming to Botswana, you can be sure you can go back without a COVID-19 case traceable to the tourism facilities and activities. Now, in terms of the theme here, enabling resilience and sustainability in accelerating recovery of the global tourism industry. I think I must emphasize that it is important to mention that the recovery of the tourism sector has to actually bank on the lessons that we have actually gained from the COVID-19 pandemic, because what Botswana did is all that happened in terms of our reforms happened during the COVID-19 pandemic, as we watched the impacts, as we watched and observed where our weaknesses are in terms of structural systems challenges, capacity challenges, product challenges, and we were able to evaluate all this and come up with what we thought what we called the economic transformation and recovery plans. And in the tourism sector, we have prioritized the review and development of the necessary policies and laws that will serve as the framework for us to be able to have the roadmap and the guidance as to how we actually enter the future of sustainable tourism. In terms of policy, we revised our policy that has been there since 1990 to encompass resilience. And in this policy, encompassing resilience focuses on diversifying the tourism product so that whatever crisis we may encounter that might lead us into job losses, business losses, as we did encounter over the last 2 years, doesn't happen. Diversifying the tourism products That's why we have diversified or started diversification into other sectors away from wildlife and natural resources, as it has been the tradition, going into culture, arts, going into lifestyle, and also expanding into other areas. And I must say that as I mentioned this, Mr. Chair, I'm also highlighting areas of potential investment opportunities that I think we will round up, concluding on the opportunities that we have available here. Now, this policy emphasizes on establishing sustainable infrastructure, supportive infrastructure, so that we are able to have supporting facilities that will enable us to drive this sector, including airports, including roads, including communications, telecommunications, and so forth. There are opportunities in there as well. We are also advancing local ownership. Sustainability has to do with empowerment of the local capacities, sustainable capacities for our locals to own the industry, to be able to participate in the industry, to apply the indigenous knowledge, and to help us in terms of managing our natural resources for the advancement of sustainable tourism based on conservation. And the capacity needs there need to be addressed also through investment. We also are driving domestic tourism. In December, we had a lot of good reports coming from our local or domestic tourism drive, where, when Omicron stepped in, it was just before Christmas, and we didn't have our tourism industry and hospitality establishments actually suffering as it happened before, because the local or domestic tourism drive actually landed people coming from the south going to the north, where we have the hub of the tourism sector operations. And we also are emphasizing through this policy on the need to improve access. So collaboration within the region in terms of air access, in terms of immigration, in terms of ease of travel, transportation, civil aviation, airport services, and so forth are also very key. I need to say that,
Sorry, if I can just jump in a second there, Minister, to ask our other minister, you're not quite your neighbour, but Minister Balala, is an area that I find very interesting when we talk about resilience of the tourism journeys and everything, is airline connection, which I believe as a hotelier is very much the main artery of our survival, is that we have really good airline connectivity. And I'm wondering, Minister, if you've got any comment on how you see that evolving and developing as part of the resilience story.
Without airlines or without connectivity, there's no tourism.
Yes.
That's the major problem we have. And the world over, we have seen that countries that have opened up and there were no connectivity, they didn't recover. Country like Dubai, there's connectivity and it's opened up, it's recovered faster. We in Africa particularly, lack of connectivity is the biggest obstacle for tourism growth. And yes, we need to have strategies towards that. How do we overcome such challenges on that aspect? But yes, the main artery of tourism is aviation, is connectivity. But how do we make sure that this connectivity is safe as well as is green?
And exactly, it needs to be sustainable. We hear all the time about, oh, the sky is clear during lockdown because there are no aircraft flying. But what we are told, and correct me if I'm wrong, that aviation contributes 2.7% of total carbon emissions, which actually is not huge. Airline engines are now 50% more fuel efficient than they were 25 years ago. But yet, we don't seem to get the acceptability or the credit for having achieved that within the industry.
The problem, Gerald, is the tourism industry is not seen to be an industry. It is looked as is just a luxury requirement that, again, contributes to the economy. Indeed. But is not seen as an industry. Where if you look deeply through the linkages of tourism and the value chain of tourism, everything is industry. If you want to build a hotel, you need the construction sector to come in. You need to transport people. You need motor vehicles and fuel. So it doesn't, when it comes to global discussions, the tourism industry does not sit in the top priority. And that's why even in our own governments,
yes,
we don't get priority in financing the sector. That's the biggest challenge we have.
Well, I absolutely agree, because within the World Travel and Tourism Council, when I was chairman, and still ongoing, is very much getting the message across that we are 10% of the global economy, we're 11% of the global labour force with 330 million people. We're looking like getting up to $1.2 trillion worth of expenditure on an annualised basis, and still some countries don't even have a Minister for Tourism. But this is something that we have to keep getting the message across, I believe, in order to achieve that resilience. Because the Honourable Minister leaves comments from Barbados, I would imagine that this is a major part of your resilience, your ability to recover, is to have that connectivity.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we saw during the course of the pandemic, where traffic ground to a grinding halt, we worked very closely with ICAO and IATA in particular to map what was happening. And that was a significant challenge for us. And one of the things that we did during the course of the pandemic was to double down on our partnerships and our relationships with our airlift partners, but also to tie that back to the broader conversation on resilience. We could not also then justify the question of having huge planes coming into the country filled with people and the conversations around carbon emissions when simultaneously we were talking about the climate crisis and the impact on small island developing states. And so we have been very encouraged by the developments that have already been taking place in the aviation industry. But here in Barbados as well, through our offices in Europe, we have also started a carbon offsetting program where, in collaboration with one of our airlift partners, we have visitors who are coming, much like Professor Wallace spoke about earlier, who are interested in where they are going and how it's connected to their own personal ethos as it relates to sustainability and resilience. And so they're planting trees, and we have a national botanical gardens. And so they're engaging in activity that is very connected to what their own personal philosophy is. One of the initiatives that we launched during the pandemic as well was a program that was called the BEST program. And embedded in that 4-pronged program was a resilience program linked specifically to hotels and to travelers. So that if you came to Barbados and you were connected and you came on board an aircraft or a cruise ship, that you were also staying in a hotel property that was practicing renewable energy utilization, that had in-house wastewater treatment projects, that had waste to energy programming, that was engaging in solarization. So all of those things we connected to airline connectivity, but also sustainable reuse policies in country.
And also, if I may interject as well, because I'm running out of time, but getting this message across is so important. And Dr. Abdulrazak, one area that you did touch on, which I don't think we have enough time because I'm told we're out of time, but I'm really interested in, because again, it's part of resilience, is our labour force within the industry. The great people who work for us, who make it all happen, who make our customers happy. And I really would be interested maybe in another session to go further into that, if you have anything to say.
Yeah, as you said, this was very important factor in during the pandemic, which is the human resources, our workforce. We need to protect them. Just going back regarding the air connectivity and how JTB, Jordan Tourism Board, and the government of Jordan believe that accessibility is a very important factor in the tourism industry, where you facilitate, give incentives, and open the country to bring more airlines, more low-cost carriers, charter flights, because at the end of the day, the passengers, the tourists are coming within these airlines. They will go and explore and experience the destination.
Indeed.
And this will affect positively the local communities, and to penetrate more, and to the beneficiaries will receive these tourists. They want to experience the authenticity of the country. And this will create jobs. This is a clear translation of the sustainable tourism development in each country.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Now, just to wrap up, I'm going to ask each of you, starting with my colleagues here on the stage, to give me a 30-second wrap-up, starting with Minister Balala, about what is your single most important point of resilience, especially in relation to the centres, to the councils that have been set up?
Thank you, Gerald. The most important thing is, first, is to build capacity.
Right.
That's the most important thing, but also you need to make sure that there is resources set aside for mitigating challenges when it happens. Again, the one thing which we have observed, small companies during this pandemic collapsed because they didn't have savings.
Right.
And the companies that sustained or overcome the crisis is because their pockets were heavy.
So building reserves is important in good times. No?
Yes. You need to have savings so that you can use them in bad times, but in good times you never do the savings. You actually reinvest it either in the same project or reinvesting and diversify the investment that you have.
Thank you. And Minister Bartlett, the founder, the chairman of all that happens in the resilience centres, please, can we have one of the final words from yourself?
Well, my take on it is a human capital development strategy that must drive new ideas, innovation, and an ability to pivot and to respond and adapt quickly to the calls that are going to be made on us in the future. So I think that this pandemic has taught us that, the ability to be nimble. And that nimbleness comes from innovation, creativity. And that resides within the people of the industry. So for me, the big takeaway from this all is resources to build human capital, to create capacity to respond, to innovate, and to add value to our process.
Thank you very much, sir. And Professor Waller?
For me, it would be awareness.
Awareness.
Awareness. I found in my experience that once persons become aware of what tourism resilience is and what the tools are, then they're more likely to want to learn more training and capacity building, more implementation of and use of tools for resilience.
Right.
So for me, it's awareness.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And if I could ask Minister Curran to give us your 30-second take on what you would really say is your priority.
Thank you so much. I don't think it's different from what my colleagues have already said, but first of all, policies and legal reviews, legal reforms, policy reforms to set the way forward and to guide that change into that future that we want, because the policies we've had have not been able to address all that. So that is the first thing. And then we also need governance structures and governance systems that will ensure accountability, that will ensure that budget reforms are implemented and new ways of managing budgets so that we can save and avoid waste or cut down on waste. Capacity building, institutional reforms. I want that crisis center. Institutional reforms, capacity building, advancing, conservation, yes, by building and strengthening capacities and the structures, infrastructure and all that. And at the end of the day, diversification so that we have got different places, much more places to put our investment and then generate revenue from that. And, that includes developing value chains around tourism so that we have different business models, sprouting out of that, and then, investing in other ecosystems that surround tourism sector.
Which emphasizes very much why we should have resilience and crisis management councils in as many countries as we possibly can have as quickly as possible to exactly address that point.
Yeah.
Sorry. And
we're ready for Botswana. Yeah.
Thank you. Minister Cummins?
Yes, welcome, Karibu. I think my brother Najib will bring you here very soon.
We're all coming. I'm going to drive in.
To bring you them.
I'm going to drive in the desert with you,
drive
having
the
learned in
desert.
Dubai. So,
I'll
Minister
send an
Cummins,
invitation for our main event in the desert. It's called Kawa June Challenge. We are going to do all kinds of sporting and motorsports and cultural events around in the center on the same June. So I'll send an invitation. Please come.
fantastic.
Okay.
We look forward to it, and we will for sure. And Minister Cummins, I'm really
Thank
getting
you.
a hard time here for being out of time. Give us 30 seconds of what really matters to you, if above all else.
So I think I'm not going to disagree with any of the things that my colleagues have said. I agree with all of them, but I would say that I perhaps would start with a paradigm shift, and that would be driven by research. This is not the first time we've faced a pandemic. It's not the first time we've had a crisis, and it's not the first time we've had new normals emerging. What have we learned from the crises that we have faced before? Have we gone back to the old normals as quickly as they end? And are we progressing gradually with each successive crisis? And when we get past that point, how do we move to the next stage? I think so that paradigm shift based on research of what we've learned over successive crises is really what I would think would anchor all of the other things that my colleagues have said, with which I agree.
Wow, another great role for the Crisis and Resilience Councils. So thank you. And last and final word, Dr. Abdul Razak.
Thank you. I think my colleagues already covered all the hot topics that we take into consideration talking about the resilience. But again, we need to work together doing this and establish the coalitions, alliances together, work together as a countries to face any future crisis. We have to take reserves. We need to establish the resilience funds, and to make sure that the tourism sector is a vital factor in the international and global economy.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of the panelists. Thank you for joining us from Jordan, from Barbados, and Botswana, and thank you for your attention in the audience. Fantastic. And now we're going to have a video message from the Honourable Reyes Maroto, Minister of Industry, Trade and Tourism in Spain. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And also, we're going to keep going because we're pretty well short of time, but refreshments are available if you just want to go and help yourselves. And then please do come back so we don't miss any of them. But they'll be continuously available. So if you feel like something, you're very welcome to try it. Thank you.
Autoridades, resto de participantes y asistentes a este importante foro. Quiero en primer lugar agradecer la invitación del ministro de Turismo de Jamaica, con quien tuve ocasión de tratar de la importancia del Centro Global de Resiliencia Turística y Gestión de Crisis durante nuestra reunión reciente en Madrid con ocasión de la celebración de Fitur. Desde su fundación en 2019, este centro está desarrollando un excelente trabajo y quiero por ello felicitar a sus dos copresidentes, el ministro Bartlett y el doctor Rifai, buen amigo de España. Quiero compartir con ustedes la hoja de ruta que estamos desarrollando en España para reforzar nuestro sector turístico y hacerlo más resiliente, sostenible y digital. La primera prioridad ha sido recuperar la movilidad internacional segura. Para ello hemos puesto en marcha una ambiciosa campaña de vacunación que ha permitido que más del 90% de la población mayor de 12 años esté en estos momentos vacunada. Y lideramos en la Unión Europea el certificado digital COVID, aceptado actualmente en un total de 60 países y territorios. Y también lideramos otras iniciativas internacionales como la que propuso la OCDE el mayo pasado. Estas dos medidas garantizan la resiliencia del sector turístico frente a futuras crisis sanitarias por la capacidad de desplegar campañas sanitarias que alcancen a toda la población, pero también para disponer de medios técnicos para desplegar un pasaporte sanitario reconocible internacionalmente. Nuestra segunda prioridad fue desarrollar un ambicioso plan de modernización y competitividad del sector turístico, un plan para modernizar nuestro modelo turístico hacia la sostenibilidad, la digitalización y la inteligencia turística. En sostenibilidad medioambiental estamos apostando por la conservación del medio ambiente, la mejora de la eficiencia energética y la introducción de aspectos de economía circular en el turismo, alineados con el Green Deal europeo. La digitalización del sector es otra de nuestras prioridades. Estamos trabajando en una plataforma inteligente de destino, un proyecto de transformación radical de la experiencia turística en España, a través de una tecnología que conecta al turista con toda la oferta en el destino y le ofrece información y servicios en tiempo real. La tecnología es esencial para mejorar la experiencia, pero también es esencial para fidelizar al turista. 2022 va a ser un año clave para la recuperación del turismo a nivel mundial y para sentar las bases de un turismo más resiliente. Podéis contar con España para avanzar en este objetivo.
I would like to now introduce to the stage Mr. Shamir Hashmi. Mr. Hashmi?
Thank you so much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I know we are behind schedule, but don't worry, we'll make sure that we keep things going. If some of you want to go and grab a snack in the meanwhile, you're free to go. And we are going to get started with the next session right now. I want to ask my panelists who are present here to come on stage. So let me ask first Raki Phillips, who is the CEO of Ras Al Khaimah Tourism Development Authority, to join me on stage. Raki, I think you can come here. I'll be this side. Yes, it could be you.
Okay.
Can I also invite Antonio Tejero, who's the CEO of Bahia Principe, on stage, who's flown all the way from Spain to attend this event. Nice having you, Antonio. Welcome. We also have two guests joining in virtually. Can we see them yet? We will be having Nicholas Mayer, who's the Global Tourism Leader for TWC. Hi, Nicholas.
Good afternoon.
Hi. And we also have Adam Stewart, from the CEO, the chairman rather, of Sandals Resort, who's also joining us from the Caribbean. Hi, Adam. How are you doing?
I'm great. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you. And last but not the least, may I invite Ahmed bin Sulaim, who's the Executive Chairman and CEO of DMCC. Hi, Ahmed. Hi, Ahmed. So we'll have you that side. Thank you. Thank you. So let's get started. We already had a very interesting first session, which really laid the foundation for this discussion and the event. And in this particular session, we are going to focus on building resilience to attract investments in the global tourism industry. So we have spoken a lot about COVID and what COVID has done to the travel industry. Now it's about looking ahead and what's the future and what's going to drive this industry forward in terms of attracting money, which is at the end of the day fuel to drive any business. So I'm going to pick your fine minds on this issue. Of course, you all have your own expertise, so I'm going to try to dip in and get a sense of what you all think is going to be the road ahead. But since we are running behind schedule, Adam and Nicholas will have to leave us midway. So I'm going to start with them, if you don't mind, gentlemen, by asking them the first questions. Nicholas, let me start with you. As someone who has a big picture view of the tourism industry, give us a sense of where is the industry right now. Of course, COVID is not over, but hopefully the worst is behind us, and now the industry is trying to rebuild. So if you have to look back at what COVID has done to the industry and how is the rebuilding process going, where do you see it right now?
Sure, and again, it's wonderful to be with all of you this afternoon. I think first of all, it's important to note that the industry is in very different places currently, and that is different in geographies as well as in different segments of the tourism ecosystem, if you will. So you would see certain industries, so certain participants in the industry, such as, for example, the cruise lining industry, that is perhaps still very much dealing with, an absence of the type of demand that they had before COVID. Whereas if we look at certain leisure segments in the Middle East, I believe to some extent also in Europe and so on, you see actually demand levels that are at or sometimes even above what it was pre-COVID, because there's pent-up demand. So I think it's very important to be clear that it's a much more nuanced picture. If we look at where people expect to be, with these lags, I think they're coming out probably less ruffled than they were worried. but with different problems than they had thought, other than the imminent cash issues, the cash flow issues, etc. I think the talent challenges are something that we're seeing very much, which also drives the investment landscape. We're seeing challenges around connectivity of their historic core markets, so they're dealing with different markets. So I suppose the most precise answer is really to say it depends where you are and which part of the segment you are. But I think we sense much stronger optimism throughout the overwhelming majority than we would have had maybe 6-7 months ago, despite the fact that many of us are still in the throes of an ebbing or ongoing Omicron wave.
Okay, I'm going to come to Adam. That's a good sense of where the industry is right now. Adam, for someone who runs a hotel and resort business, how has the dynamics changed since COVID-19, especially when it comes to investment, raising money, or attracting investors?
Well, I'll start off by saying that I think everything Nick just said is spot on. It really depends where you are in the world, geographically, which segment you're in. For us in the Caribbean, the big shift really came from initially people not understanding how detrimental this would be to tourism. So there was a belief system that this may last 90 or 120 days initially. So capital started to get spooked as it went on and on, moving from after the Delta and now the Omicron variant. What's really powerful and important is we've seen that consumers want to travel. We've seen consumers have missed the sort of frictionless ability to get up and go and explore the world. So from the consumer sentiment side, there was always almost a revenge demand of wanting to get back into the leisure space. From the corporate side and the banking side, the corporates started to get more conservative over time for fear of having a big fallout backing tourism ventures, the unknown, which really shouldn't be a surprise. In our region of the world, the Caribbean, which is the largest, the world's most tourism-dependent region, we saw, and much of it is leisure. So we saw a big recovery for those countries that were able to frictionlessly get consumers moving again. As we look at it today, we have new challenges, and I think some of this is what Nick was leading into, whereby we're seeing high inflation, you're seeing fuel prices, which will affect cost of airfares coming to a level that we did not anticipate would happen. The labor issue is a real issue, the talent in the industry and the shifting out of tourism into new sectors. So in the near term, there's a very good chance that we could have a very solid 2022 and even 2023 in terms of recovery. As we look beyond that, there is still a bit of speculation as to where the world is heading and how that could affect the global economy, and of course, leisure tourism being really a luxury, the knock-on effect there. So I think much of the minds have shifted right now to truly trying to ascertain what's going to happen with the world economy. But the countries that made it frictionless in the leisure space in our neck of the woods have done an incredible job, and the recovery is real.
Well, Adam, I'll come to the people here on stage with me. Now, Adam has given a slightly optimistic view about the recovery looking solid. Iraqi, let me come to you as someone who handles a destination which relies entirely, or let's say primarily, on leisure. The big question now for the industry is that, okay, it's a time to rebuild, and if you want to rebuild, you need money, you need capital. This industry was one of the worst hit during COVID-19. So from your point of view, are you saying that the dynamics or the factors which influence raising capital or attracting investors, have they changed since COVID-19? Is it as easy as it was earlier to go out and try to get money? Or you think the rules of the game have changed now?
So you bring up a lot of valid points. I mean, the UAE, if we look at it, 12% of the country's GDP is driven by tourism. And for an oil-rich country like the UAE, that's a significant contributor. 750,000 employees rely on jobs related to tourism and hospitality. And the investments that have been put into the industry
I think the Raki's microphone is off. Till they figure out Raki's, okay, they've got the microphone, so that's fine.
Hello? Good. All right.
Good, we can hear you.
So as I was saying, 12% of the UAE's GDP comes from tourism. And for the UAE to be an oil-rich country, that is a significant contributor. 750,000 employees rely heavily on jobs that are based on tourism. And investing in the industry, whether it's hotels, tourism, or tourism-related, is attractive. It's seen as a very nice industry to be, and it enhances the livability of a community. But it has been tough. It's been the worst hit industry globally. But the recovery and the resilience of tourism is remarkable. It is, when you look at things that have happened throughout time, whether it was the Zika virus, whether it was 9/11, the financial crisis, tourism has always bounced back much faster than other places. So I do think there is no doubt that there is interest in investing in tourism, but the investment methodology has changed. There's certain things investors are looking for from sustainability, what the long-term vision is. I think the old days of big pizzazz and things are no longer what they used to be. People are looking for sustainable growth, and Ras Al Khaimah definitely offers that. I mean, even pre-pandemic, we were looking at IRRs in tourism of over 16%. But everything that as a destination is happening, it's important. When you look at the UAE, how we handled the pandemic, how we came out of the pandemic, and truly how we are living a very normal life. The UAE went into a 6-week lockdown, opened up and never shut down. Until today, you see other parts of the world shutting down. So we are very blessed to be here with the very high vaccination rates, with the way the government has helped and supported everything from SMEs to startups to new businesses. I think as people look towards investment, the UAE will always be top of mind.
Antonio, I want to get you in here before I go to Ahmed, because I want an investor's perspective from Ahmed. That's why I'm coming to you in the end. You run resorts across the globe. Of course, there's a recovery phase now. Are you finding now that when it comes to raising capital or attracting investors, the rules have changed, the dynamics have changed, or it's the same?
Well, we're actually very proud and very happy that last month in Madrid, we had a signature of a $200 million loan to Bahia Principe Hotels and Resorts. To that signature were the President of the Dominican Republic, the Tourism Minister of Dominican Republic, and also the Tourism Minister of Jamaica. I think that shows the trust that the market has in Bahia Principe and our product. You know, if you think about it, Bahia Principe is a company with 27 hotels, most of them in the Caribbean. We are leisure, we are all-inclusive, generally beach locations, vacational. So when everyone is thinking of, oh my God, I want to go on vacation, what's the first thing that you think, right? It's these kind of hassle-free vacations on the beach, these great locations. So, you know, on our side, at least for Bahia Principe, we didn't have a problem raising that money. I think that shows the trust, as I said, of the market in our product and in the company. We have a very strong backbone. We are owners of the hotels that we run. So on our side, I must admit that it was a very positive movement, and I see it very positively.
Right? That's quite positive given the circumstances. Now, Ahmed, you're the one on this panel who does not run a hotel, and you are on the other side looking at investments. Tell us, how has COVID-19 changed the way investors are looking at investing, whether it's hospitality, whether it's other sectors? Has the mindset changed?
I didn't see the lockdown really happening. I couldn't believe they were going to shut down airports and all that. But when it dawned on me, this is the new reality, and we were all working from home, I looked at it as an opportunity for us. I knew other centers will take a step back. It's normal. I was hoping, and thankfully our team stuck together and jumped on the opportunity to capture. And we stayed in touch with our members. We stayed in touch online. We had webinars. We use Salesforce. That's completely online. They register, set up their companies online. So that kept the momentum going. I just came from a visit to Uptown Tower, Dubai's new
super tall tower, if you will. Where I was standing was 325 meters. It's the tallest building in Jumeirah Lakes Towers. You said no hotels. Actually, Almas Tower had a hotel concept in it. I didn't like it. I canceled it because of security matters and an argument I had with my management. They wanted the hotel on top. I preferred it to be on the bottom, so the extra infrastructure and elevators do not take the space. In the end, we decided it's not there, and from 40-story, we have the tallest office building in the Middle East, 63 floors of usable office space that was sold out to end users in end of 2004, where we were only 400 members in 7 or 8 hours using an Oracle system. No brokers, no speculators. Today, we represent over 20,000 businesses. I mentioned Uptown Tower, 22 floors of LEED Gold office space, starting from about 22,000 square feet, tapers down to 19.5 thousand square feet. Then it's 11 floors of boutique hotel. We signed with Accor. We're using the So brand. We're calling it So Uptown. And the rest is branded Resi, which is about 24, 25 floors. When we signed the agreement with Accor a few years ago, the chairman of Accor's one question was, will this building be built? And this is before COVID. You know, the groundbreaking ceremony was September of 2019. And in third quarter of 2022, I will be working there. We've broken records in 2020 in month-to-month registrations. 2021, we had our best performance. We registered 2,845 companies. We've never done that in the years before the global recession or after the global recession. And we anticipate that flow of business will continue to grow because what we provide, unlike other specialized zones, is ecosystems, whether it's the Dubai Diamond Exchange, which next week we're hosting the International Diamond Manufacturing Association's President's Meeting, the World Federation of Diamond Bourses President's Meeting, the Dubai Diamond Conference Meeting, and arguably the most important jewelry show will start from 22 of February. A month ago, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed attended the World Coffee Championship Dubai. And that had amazing numbers of people. More and more is happening. There is also the peace treaty with Israel that changed the dynamics as well. We got a lot of tourists there. Some of them actually, when the lockdowns happened in Israel, decided to stay in Dubai for an extra month or two. We also in 2019, I believe, Surat had its first international flight. It goes to Sharjah. But I feel the impact in our diamond exchange because they go there to buy rough diamonds. It's an evolving matter, and I believe in the next few days there are international agreements between UAE and India which will positively impact the country. So whether it's commercially positive impact to the DMCC or the hotel business, which we're not worried about, you will see more progress there. I also want to add that for the past 5 years, DMCC and its business community contributes over 10% of Dubai's GDP.
Yeah, that's significant. You guys are significant stakeholders in sort of contributing. I know Adam and Nicholas, you both have to leave, so let me come back to you quickly for your closing thoughts. Adam, I'm going to come to you first. As you know, Raki was also talking about in Antonio that they've been able to attract investors because of the destinations they have. Going ahead, do you think that hotels have to adopt a different approach in terms to get investments? Because the worry, especially within the banking community, is that this sector is going to take time to pick up, and that's why they're hesitant to put the money on the table. Are you seeing that, and do you think a different approach is needed at this point of time?
I think, I agree with everything that's been said. I think the best run companies in the world are going to win. They're going to be winners and losers in the world, as we've seen in the past with any kind of reset. In my own company, we have never had more pipeline and hotel developments on the books than we have right now. We have 7 hotels currently under construction and being developed. As a business, my family and I have always built sort of one and a half hotels at a time, and you're seeing that demand. So the strong brands, the brands that have trust and integrity from the consumer base and from the commercial space, the banking space, are going to be financed. That word, as I described earlier, that revenge sort of comeback from both the consumer and the investor community, there was a hiatus. in our region of the world, there was a slowdown. There was a stockpile of capital. There's an immense amount of capital out there looking to place itself in segments of the industry. And as Nick said, you know, it's not all equal. So you have the business segment, you have the leisure segment. Within each of those segments, there are different functionalities. We've seen the struggle that the cruise industry have gone through, and are, you know, they're very aggressive attempts to recover with unique hurdles. That's different to Caribbean land-based tourism or leisure tourism that's happening in parts of the West. So I think the strongest brands, the biggest brands, are going to be able to be financed. There are some elements that are changing in the product delivery. I think health and safety is going to continue to be top of mind in many ways, but it's all about experience. And if this thing taught us nothing else, it taught us the value of the global travel, and ultimately that our generation and all of us living here on this planet, that we lost something that was so important to us that probably many people took for granted. The simplicity of just hopping on a plane and exploring the most interesting parts of the world. And as a result, we never want to see that happen again. So I think the future is bright, and we'll push ahead.
Nicholas, I know you also have to leave along with Adam. So quickly from you, as Adam was mentioning that the big brands would be able to sail through, but other brands or other segments might struggle. What's your view on this? Which are the ones that are going to survive and thrive?
So I think at the source of this is that after 2 years of COVID, which of course also had owner, investor, operator relations, I think people came out of these relations in one or two ways, right? It's not very original. They either came in a strengthened relationship where they really, basically, the battle and crisis basically got them together, and they have a much closer relationship now. They have found new ways of dialogue, more direct communications. And contrary, you also see quite a few that come out, I would say, in a pre-divorce style, right? Still married because these contracts are 20 years old, but each, or sometimes one or the other, feeling that he no longer belongs in his relationship and didn't get what they wanted in the past. So, and you see both of them. I don't see any trends that it is more specific in one place or the other, but I think those two you see out. So I think where Adam is very right is, Adam, he said, the best ones are going to come out. And I absolutely agree, right? There is some great operators and there is some phenomenal owners that have pivoted their business models, that have found new sources of income, new ways of collaborating under a management agreement or another element, new ways of tapping into the distribution chains and working with tour operators and others, and they're going to be doing fine. I am not so sure that the good ones are necessarily the large ones. The large ones, your large operators, do indeed, of course, have a formidable ability to mobilize large groups of people, right? Through their loyalty program, through their corporate contract, etc. That's primarily business driven. Well, you collect the points on business and you spend them on leisure. Business is going to come down, in my view, substantially lower. I don't think business travel will recover to pre-COVID levels because, quite frankly, we've all discovered it's not necessary. That doesn't mean it's going to be zero, but it's perhaps going to be, I don't know, a quarter less, a third less, because that's what we probably all realized, that, we did a certain amount of, I would say, stupid travel before COVID, that we say, well, that one I don't need to recover, whereas other parts we very much wanted to recover very quickly. And so
Sorry, some tech issues, but Nicholas was making a good point there, so I'm going to come back to the gentleman here. I'll come to you, Antonio, first. I mean, the point that even Antonio made, which Adam was making about the big brands surviving, the quality of the product surviving, is that going to be the key to raise money? Or you think now there are enough investors who are willing to look into new ideas? They are not necessarily looking at the traditional way of doing business.
We do think so. Bahia Principe, as I said, we're 27 hotels. We're not the largest company in the world. We don't pretend to be the largest company in the world. We are a family-owned Spanish business. We have very strong values. We're looking to expand through an asset-light model in which people will appreciate. Of course, we will have ROI. We have great ROIs. But basically what we want also is to establish a long-term relationships. we have these kind of values. We're in it to make something that will, a legacy, something that will last for a long time. So I think there is space, and I think there are investors that are looking for large companies, fantastic. But they're also looking for companies where if they pick up the phone, they want to talk to the CEO, they want to talk to the group CEO, they just pick up the phone and we're there. So there is that demand, I think, especially in these kind of markets, Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, Arabia, Asian countries. The values are a little bit different, and that's what we're looking at. So I think there is that, that possibility.
Ahmed, let me get you in quickly on this. I mean, you spoke about your company playing a key role in terms of contributing to Dubai's economy. Where do you see the hospitality sector playing? What kind of role is that going to play? And given the circumstances, what we have seen over the last 2 years, how easy or challenging is it going to be to scale that segment? Sorry, that question was for Ahmed.
Oh, sorry, I can't hear very well.
Yeah. I thought so. You were confused. I mentioned that I avoided the hotel in Al Mas Tower. For the Uptown District, we needed more diversity. So there's we picked up, last year I went to the JCK show to get a feel where the jewelry industry is. And if you read the headlines, you think that people will avoid spending money, and you know, jewelry is the first that feels it when the recession is coming or fear, etc. But we noticed that they spent more money because they felt that life is too short. They want to experience, they want to travel, they want to explore. They don't want to be cooped up in a house and all that. So despite the challenges, despite the pain, we've noticed people just go and take more risks, live a little bit. My travels have mostly been for work, especially when there are lockdowns more on this side and it's a bit more open in Miami. I spent a little bit more. Actually, I extended in Miami due to issues in Israel with the rockets at the time, and I went for the Bitcoin conference over there. That decision got me to bring Michael Saylor to our gold conference because I heard about him the first time, saw him in action. I think you're going to see more activity. You're going to see more activity. I mean, if people are spending more on diamonds and jewelry today, then the hotel is not something to be worried about. As long as they see the precautions are taken up, as long as they see that sticker, that it's a comfort, it's a perception thing. And you know, I believe that a lot of the countries around the world have stepped up. Dubai has set an example that they can perform under these circumstances. Going forward, the headlines are between Denmark, Switzerland, and others that they don't see it as a risk anymore. So even the UK, I believe, Turkey is following as well, where the requirements for COVID are no longer needed. Some even are not requiring PCR tests, I hear.
Raki, I'll quickly get you in. We don't have much time left. So, going ahead, when you're running a destination now, in terms of the mix you're looking at, what kind of resorts, hotels you want, is there a worry that the point which others were making on the panel, that maybe the big brands, the stronger brands may be able to survive, but the mid-scale or the brands that are new may find it tougher to grow from here? Is that a worry when you look from a destination point of view?
Not at all. I mean, for the longest time, Ras Al Khaimah was very much a Hilton-driven brand. This morning I had breakfast with the president of Hilton, and he was telling me that his owners are coming back to him saying they're getting better returns than they've ever had before compared to pre-pandemic. But we have smaller independent hotel brands. Jannah Hotel is an independent brand. Richard, the CEO, is here, that has been very active in Ras Al Khaimah and has done quite well. But we also have some new hotel entrants that are coming. There's quite a few new brands that will be popping up. So I don't think it's just the survival of the global brands. But you also have to look at the consumers. Consumers are looking for something that's more experiential. They're looking for something that's more sustainable. They're looking for things that cater to them. And Ras Al Khaimah, being a nature-driven emirate, having the highest mountain, I think it's important to have a balance. Last month we made an announcement about Wynn Resorts, which was the largest FDI investment that's ever happened in Ras Al Khaimah, right on Marjan Island. So we can offer the variety of things, everything from global resorts to glamping opportunities to smaller projects, all of them. There is a customer for those.
We have run out of time, so I'm going to give each of you just 30 seconds to sum it up. One big challenge and one big opportunity now you see post-COVID, or we are not post-COVID yet, but in this COVID era. Ahmed, starting with you, I know you're closely associated with diamonds and jewelry.
No, I see a lot of challenges. Don't worry about that.
So maybe one.
The one challenge I think, and we should look at, I mean, we've done a lot of things right, but globally, communication is important. Timing is important. So getting the message through clearly and not having it getting lost in all things. So there's a lot of misleading headlines around the world. That, to me, is the biggest challenge for me.
Antonio, coming to you, one maybe opportunity and one challenge, especially when it comes to growth investment.
Challenge, probably human capital. We know the great resignation, so we take advantage actually, and we're trying to do a lot more training, whether it's languages, professional training, cross-cultural abilities training. Part of those 200 million from the BD Invest and the Banco Popular Dominicano will go into that, and opportunities to grow. We're very positive about the future, so we see it, as I say, very positively.
I give you the final word, Raki. But where do you see the biggest opportunity and challenge, especially for the sector now in this new era?
So, I mean, the biggest opportunity is, as we get to the endemic, as I'd like to say, is travel has to become easier. And right now, I think there is the technology that's out there. There's a lot more communication. Events like this allow us to sit with leaders from the Caribbean, leaders from Africa, leaders from other parts of the world, to be able to come with global travel solutions that make things so much easier. I mean, coming into here, we did the rapid test. There's ways that you can meet, you can get back to normal in a much easier way. And I think I'm excited about the technology that's going to come out of this to ease travel and make it a lot more fun.
Well, thanks a lot. So we have it. I mean, unfortunately, we have to cut down the session a bit because we are running a bit late, but I think we got a lot of interesting insights from all of the panelists here about more positives than negatives. Yes, there are some challenges, but it looks like there are more opportunities now. So thank you so much for joining us on this session. Thank you so much for listening in.
Okay, well, good afternoon, Your Excellencies, travel leaders, ladies and gentlemen, friends of the global travel and tourism industry. My name is Daniela Wagner. I'm going to be your MC for the next hour. I would be very grateful if the people who are enjoying the refreshments could come and join us again in the audience so that we can move on with our program. So basically, I'll give you a couple of minutes just to come in and sit down. But in the meantime, I'll just do some introductions. So I am the Group Business Development Director of Jacobs Media Group in London, which also owns the Resilience Council, the Global Travel and Tourism Resilience Council, which we've been speaking about today. It's one of the 14 brands owned by Jacobs Media Group, which also includes Connecting Travel here in Dubai, our new office that we launched last year, Travel Weekly, Travolution, Aspire, The Caterer, and connections. Minister Bartlett spoke earlier on about the way that we met and about the relationship that we formed with the Resilience Centre. And it's quite incredible to me that we're here today announcing all the things that we're announcing, and the fact that there are now 2 centres already in operation and 12 more being launched around the world. So we're very proud of that partnership and look forward to building on it. Despite the efforts across the industry, we see that our sector is still lagging behind in terms of preparedness and the ability to recover quickly from disruption, and COVID has really demonstrated that even more clearly. So what we're trying to do in the Resilience Council is to focus on driving action versus theory. And as we've heard today, we really need to continue to engage, to develop, and to share case studies and encourage more collaborative actions. In this year alone, we've launched a partnership, public-private sector partnership between USAID and Intrepid in Bosnia-Herzegovina, which brings together a key funding organization with the leading global sustainable tour operator for the relaunch of Bosnia-Herzegovina as the heart of sustainable Europe. In Jamaica, we're launching a groundbreaking new project called Jamaica Cares, together with Global Rescue and 4 insurance companies, which will ensure that all inbound travelers are protected in case of emergency. And in September, we'll be holding the next edition of A World for Travel in partnership with the Ventus Media Group, which is a Davos-style think tank, which will be held in Portugal, talking about the transformation of travel activities into more sustainable actions. Now, to continue this afternoon's program, I'm delighted that we'll hear from a panel of very powerful women, noted for their professionalism and not their gender, who are going to share with us the actions that they are taking. The panel is being introduced and moderated by the extraordinary Aradhana Kowala, a new friend of mine, I'm pleased to say. Aradhana is a truly global expert on the travel, tourism, and hospitality industries, and is founder and CEO of Aptamind, a company that advises governments on how to use tourism as a force for good and unleash the full potential of the visitor economy. Aradhana is a passionate advocate of regenerative travel and women in leadership, and has spoken widely on sustainable activism, tourism of the future, and has been a keynote speaker in many different organizations such as WTTC, World Economic Forum, and the UN bodies, to name but a few. Aradhana, please, I'm delighted to welcome you on stage to introduce your panel. Thank you so much.
Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, distinguished guests, and my dear friends. Gender equality is both an urgent economic goal, but also a moral imperative. Yet, if any of you believe that we are any closer to achieving gender parity, the pandemic has laid bare the realities. Travel, tourism, and hospitality as a sector has been hardest hit by the pandemic, a sector which in which women are overrepresented. We were already poorer than the men before the pandemic, owing to a lot of systemic inequalities. I'm talking pay, employment, work-life balance, and safety at work and at home. And now, 2 years into the pandemic, the gap has widened, and the deep-rooted inequalities in the society has been exposed. What's more, so many women have had to drop out of the labor force participation in the last 2 years that now, as a society, we have regressed, ladies and gentlemen, back to the 1950s. Our sector has more than 50% women represented across all levels of hierarchy, but at the top, it still is male-dominated. Although that is changing, and this panel we're going to have is a good start. We have 7 heavy hitters on the panel who will bring a diverse and truly global perspective share how women around the world have been affected, and even more critically, how we can achieve a feminist recovery from the pandemic by weaving in resilience as a red thread and a critical ingredient for recovery. These women are the powerhouses, the visionaries, the pragmatists, the romantics, the message shapers, the influencers, the idealists, the trailblazers. Each of them have proved conventional wisdom wrong. Their common denominator is they've worked very hard, refused to give up, and I can tell you that they're just getting warmed up and not finished by any stretch of imagination. Let's ask them what they think is the role of women in transforming the global tourism industry and increasing its resilience. And let's also ask them what's the advice for women who want to be up there with them to shape the future of tourism. Please, may I welcome on stage my wonderful panelists, and probably I'll go alphabetical and very quickly. Can we start with some of them who are joining virtually? Dr. Catherine Koo. Catherine is a gender expert and consultant to the UNWTO. She started and sold businesses for profit, and as a consultant has lived and worked in Malaysia, New Zealand, and America. She researches at the Griffith Institute for Tourism, has published several books, hundreds of research articles, and is often cited in the media. Now, here's a fun fact. Catherine is a big cheerleader for solo women traveling, so if any of you are planning that trip, you know where to get your inspiration from. Next up, we have Dr. Esther Muniuri, who's the director of the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center at the Kenyatta University. Esther brings decades of experience in climate change, vulnerability, mitigation and adaptation, crisis management in tourism, tourism governance, and geospatial analysis. These attributes, in addition to her regional expertise in Africa, meant that she was the first port of call when the Resilience Center decided to set up the headquarters in East Africa. Next, we have Senator, the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith. She is Jamaica's first female Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. She's currently on her second term and has represented Jamaica and the region at numerous bilateral regional and international meets, including the G7, G20. Minister Smith, here's a fun fact, you trained as a lawyer, cleared the bar, and even set up and ran your own practice. I can tell you, Minister, I sure am glad, I'm sure half of Jamaica is glad, that you left your corporate job to be at public service. Thank you. Next, we have Liz Ortiguera, hi Liz, who is the CEO of PATA, and brings with her 25 years of global experience and expertise in working both at multinational corporations, including Amex and Merck, but also startup environments and across multiple diverse sectors. Now, Liz is passionate about innovation, and in the realm of responsible tourism, she has campaigned hard for some of the most critical things which actually make tourism a force for good. Now, here's a fun fact. Liz has studied at least at 3 of the top 10 and might I add, highly capitalistic schools, including Stanford, NYU, and Columbia. But I can't think of a more committed socialist at heart, because Liz really cares deeply about poverty eradication, community upliftment, and empowering education. Welcome, Liz. Next, we have Nikolina Angelkova, who's the Deputy Chair, Parliamentary Tourism Commission, National Assembly of Bulgaria, the former Minister of Tourism for Bulgaria, a member of the Parliament and Tourism Policy Committee, and member of Legal Committee. She's also the Honorary Chairwoman of the Association of Economic Development and Tourism in Bulgaria. And now the person responsible for GTRCM in the Balkans. In other words, she's an overachiever, and when Nikki gets some time, she just goes off, hops on a flight, goes to Boston, and gets another degree from Harvard. Next, we have Rika Jean-François, who's the Commissioner of ITB's CSR agenda. Hi, Rika. She is an expert in ethnic identities, responsible and sustainable development, human rights, and diversity. She's been a formidable soldier who, over the last 18 years, has focused on building up ITB's CSR efforts and pretty much spearheaded the implementation also of ITB's LGBTQ+ travel segment. She heads the South Asian market, sits on the board of directors of PATA, and here's what she does for fun. She plays jury member at several global tourism contests and speaking engagements. Welcome, Rika. And last but not the least, we have Yolanda, who is a senior tourism strategist at ICF and an expert in sustainable destination management. She specializes in product development, marketing, tourism. She has over 20 years of experience, both public and private sector. She's the former director of affiliate members of the UNWTO, the former deputy minister of tourism of Spain, Canary Islands in Spain. And she also worked as an international advisor and consultant to the industry. My God, it's never ending. Ladies, welcome. Before we jump into the questions in the panel, we have a video message from someone which I'm sure all of you would love to listen to. This is a lady who needs no introduction. We have Her Excellency Sheikha Mai bint Mohammed Al Khalifa, who's the president of the Bahrain Authority for Culture and Antiquities. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here, but please, let's listen in to what she has to say.
Good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here with you to participate in this important forum focusing on the tourism and cultural tourism in particular. Here in Bahrain, I would like to share with you my experience in the private sector, Sheikh Ibrahim Center, and the houses we restored and used them for cultural activities. At the end of the day, it's become a cultural district, and a lot of visitors visit Sheikh Ibrahim Center, and from the same idea we create a bigger program in the public official department, the Perling Bath, which is listed in the World Heritage Site. We managed to inscribe Muharraq because of this site, and you know the story of the Perling and the ancient history of Bahrain. I would like to invite all of you to come to Bahrain and to share with you the experience in this important sector, cultural tourism, and to learn from your experience and to develop more sustainable cultural tourism places.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Really appreciate that message. Ladies, let's jump straight into the panel. I would love all of you to answer this question, so we go around and ask everyone the same question. So the gendered impacts of the pandemic has been felt around the globe. However, the specific contours of this impact have varied depending on which region you're in, geography and country, and the policy response towards those impacts have equally been divergent. Tell us, in no more than 1 minute each, please, how bad is the situation in your geography where you are? Shall we start with the virtual panelists? Liz, if you want to have a go.
Sure. I think you were spot on earlier when you said that women were basically the hardest hit with this pandemic because they constitute the majority of the frontliners. And so that is a big concern, and we've piloted a support program in Thailand to reach out to the likes of vendors, tour guides, drivers, and in those cases, we really do need to, magnify that and replicate it across the region. They've been the hardest hit.
Fantastic. Rika, Catherine, how bad is the situation where you are with regards to impact of COVID on women, women's jobs? Let's hear all the bad things.
Well, if I talk about Germany, of course, and Northern Europe, it's a little bit of a different picture. Because we are very privileged in comparison to the rest of the world, and to the rest of the so-called emerging destinations, of course. But of course, there was a high level of stress and burden, especially for women over here as well. I mean, even if they had the privilege to work less hours or to work from mobile office, they still had to take care of childcare. There was working mothers, and we all had homeschooling. So as you can imagine, also over here, the burden was on the women because they had to double manage everything. And there's still a gap.
Well noted. Catherine, what about Australia? You're in Australia.
I'm in Australia, Radana, but I'm speaking on behalf of Asia and the Pacific because as UNWTO's gender and tourism expert, we've just finished writing the regional report on women in tourism in Asia and the Pacific, and the situation is not looking very good because we have a lot more migrant workers, and during the pandemic, these migrant workers have been, because they are not legalized, so they have been stuck, they have been stranded, they have lost their income and their livelihoods, and nobody is reaching out to them. They have been sidelined. So this is one. Culture has always been a problem in limiting the empowerment of women in Asia and Pacific in the tourism sector. And tourism, because women have chosen to go into tourism because of the flexibility it's allowed them, because it's allowed them to be also to take responsibility on the domestic front. So when COVID happened, they take responsibility on the domestic front. And so they have been left behind, so to speak.
Got it. Minister Smith, if I may come to you, how bad is the situation in Jamaica, in the Caribbean?
Well, let me set the general context, which is that we're a small island developing state in one of the most tourism-dependent regions in the world, where tourism is our primary foreign exchange earner, and in which we have more than 40% households being female-led. So when you connect the fact that tourism is responsible for, let's say, 43% of our GDP, 40% of our households are led by women, and the pandemic brought on border closures, travel restrictions, closure of the entertainment sector, hospitality sectors, etc., closure of schools, so that, as we've heard from our other panelists, where women take on the domestic care responsibilities and homeschooling, while in a state of unemployment, it's certainly placing layer upon layer of challenge.
Esther.
Thank you very much. For Eastern Africa, as the rest of Africa, the disease itself is not that bad. Like, for example, for Kenya, the cases, the COVID cases are about 320,000. While the deaths about 5,600, which means that the disease impact is not that much. However, for tourism, in the Eastern Africa region, tourism contributes to about 10% of the GDP, and about 1 in 10 jobs in tourism sector. So when COVID came, and the fact that we rely quite a lot on international tourism, the tourism industry was heavily affected. Now, moving on to your second question about the policy issues. Now, we have been, we took the COVID impact very seriously from the very beginning, and that can be seen all over the Eastern Africa, with various countries coming up with the COVID protocols, the wearing of masks and what have you, and that really helped in building confidence. And therefore, even international tourism started recovering quite fast. But before the international tourism opened up, the domestic tourism is what has been sustaining the industry. And for the case of Kenya, for example, having a very vibrant minister who took up the issues and brought the COVID-19 protocols very quickly and supported the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center in carrying out research. This also helped a lot.
Fantastic. Nikki.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to use the opportunity to take Edmund and the great team of ITIC, Dr. Taleb Rifai, Gerald Lawless, and Ibrahim, for really getting us here together and being part of this wonderful event for the global resilience tourism. And of course, women are taking part of it, and very crucial one. In Bulgaria, as everywhere in the world, our country depends very much on tourism, and I am honored that actually I was the minister to set up the ministry as a separate administration back in 2014. And before the pandemic, we managed to reach a 34% growth of international arrivals, reaching up to 9.3 million international visitors, which of course should be the goal to be achieved now post-COVID. Of course, this will be very difficult considering all the uncertainty, but this is where we have to unite and use the crisis that was created by the pandemic to set up a new rules for tourism and in particular for welcoming the guests in the proper country. And here I think women could play a very crucial role and to encourage more women in leadership positions where actually the luck is.
We'll come to the solutions.
Yes.
We'll come to the solutions.
Yes.
Yolanda, if I can bring you in, what is the situation in your geography? How bad is the situation? And then I would love to ask a follow-up question, and I would love to go around in the reverse way. How bad is the situation? But we also know when the policy is right and they come up with gender-sensitive solutions, it can lead to a sea change, and it can actually cause difference on the ground. So tell me, how bad is the situation, number one, and number two, and I will go through to all of you. Give me an example, again, very quickly. Yeah. Who has done it well? Who can we learn from? Any positive case studies of people who are really changing the game?
Well, first, at ICF, we are now working in different projects in different parts of the world. Some of them are related to a repositioning strategy for the destination. And although it has been very tough for everybody in the labor force, including women, I have a positive impression. I think something positive has accelerated because of the pandemic. What do I mean? When you want to reposition a strategy nowadays, you need to find what makes it different, the authenticity, showcase the authenticity of the place. And to do that, you have to look at the heritage, the culture, what really makes a difference. And I've noticed that in many cases, are women who are related with preserving heritage because they have the skills that perhaps a visitor want to see. So they are playing a crucial role in product development. And that it happened before, but now, since the new consumer is looking for this kind of products, they play a central role in that. I think that's very positive. And as a good example, we are working now on a project in the Canary Islands, my home islands. And in there is a project to preserve a certain tradition that was being lost, that lasted for almost 400 years, and it was connected to pottery, women potters. But this has been done always over the centuries by women. And now with this shared value project, we're going to ask the visitor to contribute with a percentage of the trip to make sure that we have other women learning this and showcasing this in the future.
Fantastic. It's a micro example, but that's 80% of our industry, small, medium, and micro enterprises. Nikki, it's not all doom and gloom. There are lots of positive examples out there. Who do you think is doing it well?
Well, in Bulgaria, many of the women that are employed in tourism are mainly in the tour operator area, and they are doing really, really, really good because, as I said, women personally are very good in welcoming. This comes from the mindset from the family. Usually women are considered that they have to take for the family, they have to take care for the family, and they transfer this knowledge towards the welcoming people. So in the tour operators part and the hoteliers part in our country, we have more women occupied, even in a leadership position where actually the percentage is a little bit below, let's say 55% are men occupied in leadership position in the sector in Bulgaria, and the other are women. So we have to work in that. Yes, exactly.
Esther, well, you spoke already about what the Kenyan government is doing. Any other quick example, perhaps?
Yes. Well, if I may talk about Kenya, about 54% of workers in the tourism sector are women. And I would say Kenya is quite a good case study of raising the profile of women, because many of the associations in the private sector are actually headed by women. And that drives the women along, and many managers as well in the various hotels in Kenya are actually women. And this is very, very positive. And we have an association in Kenya for women, which encourages women to own businesses and also to occupy high levels of management. And again, with Kenya, the private sector and the public sector works very, very closely with great guidance from the ministry, with the minister putting them together with lots of meetings and engagements. And this also encourages even the private sector to be more vibrant.
Fantastic. In hindsight, I should have said, you can't name your country. So no Bulgaria, no Kenya, it has to be another country. But Minister Smith.
I have to name my country. So just very quickly, apart from the tourism resilient corridor, which was a geographically designated space wherein all the workers were retrained so that in attractions, in hotels, among the craft vendors, there was a total sensitivity to COVID protocols and safety, which allowed for us to have a 0.1% infection rate and has people wanting to continue to come to Jamaica as a safe space. That therefore helped this sector to reopen earlier than perhaps in other places, and again re-engage employment. Apart from that, the government engaged in our first ever grant support program, which targeted women and the most vulnerable persons, that is, persons who earn below a particular salary threshold, persons with disabilities, and ensured that there was also a grant to entertainment sector, which again, largely informal economy, largely made up of women, therefore impacting by direct cash transfers some of the broader impacts of the pandemic.
Thank you. I'll go to Catherine, then Rika, and finish with Liz. Catherine, who's doing it well?
The Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Australia has worked with the governments of Ecuador and Mexico to provide training on digital entrepreneurship to women in tourism in the rural areas of those two countries. But what they've done really right is to design these courses, these training courses, in consultation with these women in the rural areas beforehand, so that the curriculum is not only gendered, but the needs and the design of the training were for these women. For example, the women could bring if they have little babies, they could bring their babies to the training center. Now, this is not seen in anywhere of this training for women on digital entrepreneurship, where it's supposed to be a very hard skill. These women also talked about growing their business together with their support people at home. Usually these are their brothers, their nephews, their cousins. We asked them to bring this person to class with them in order to support them in their learning, because we knew that they will continue working with these people after the training when they got home. And so this ensures the sustainability of the learning process. So I think this is done really well and really from a gendered approach.
Fantastic example, I think, also of combining community and using technology as a positive intervention. Rika, your example, your case study.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think it's about female leadership, and we need real examples, and this might be very small examples, but especially women through all the centuries, you know, they are the ones who survived their families through all of the crisis. So sometimes we don't need the big managers, but we really need to speak to women who are in the field, you know, even informal women who know much better maybe than anybody else how to survive a family. But if you ask for a concrete example, it comes to my mind, and we will talk about it at next month's ITB virtual convention, is the example of Holly Budge, who is doing, who is working for How Many Elephants, but she has a wonderful initiative with female rangers. you know, because poaching started to be a big problem again, especially during the pandemic, because all the guards, they lost their income. There was an initiative of women, of female rangers coming up, fighting against these poaching initiatives of the males. So this is one of the examples which is really bright, I think, because they would find a solution even in a moment of biggest crisis rather than giving up.
Fantastic. Liz?
I'd say one best practice would be the use of education technology, particularly mobile first. And I worked in ed tech prior to joining PATA, and I've seen use of this as a support scheme, both here in Singapore for impacted workers across travel and tourism, and in remote Cambodia. You know, even in less developed nations, the lowest income segment has smartphones now. A majority of them, you know, above 80%, which is very different from 5 years ago. So this can be an effective tool to reskill, upskill, and have broad reach at an economical cost.
Excellent. Minister Smith, if I can bring you in here. Jamaica leads the Caribbean in more ways than one. So how do you ensure what Jamaica is doing is actually replicated across the region? And more importantly, how do you measure to manage? You've tabled hundreds of bills on employment, violence against women, and many others. How do you measure to manage?
Okay, that's maybe 5 questions, but you're only giving me a minute. So I'll say that within the region, within the CARICOM region, that is the English-speaking Caribbean, there are 14 countries, and we meet often. We meet as foreign ministers. We also meet within the context of CARFA, which is the Regional Caribbean Public Health Authority. And through those meetings, we've shared experiences throughout the pandemic. Probably we've met more in the last 2 years than we've met in the last 5. Yeah. Because of the need for frequent exchange of protocols, of best practices, of the need to coordinate our policies in respect of movement of people and how we're dealing with our issues at home. So that's the mechanism we've used to share, using technology, of course, to ensure that we avoid the travel restrictions.
Fantastic. Esther, if I can ask you, this is an actionable platform, and I'd love to get your views, and also Nikki's, because you're leading the Resilience Center in East Africa. How are you walking the talk with the center?
Thank you very much. Now, after the center in Eastern Africa was established in November 2019, we embarked on our mandate, and the mandate is research, policy, formulation and advocacy, capacity building, communication, and project management. We started with the countrywide research on COVID-19 impact, the recovery strategies, and what was being done across the country. And this was directed and supported by the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife, and all the counties were involved in the study. And the center became a coordinating arm where we edited whatever content was being forwarded from different parts of the country. That was for Kenya, and that was immediately after COVID hit us. That was between March and June 2020. One of the biggest achievements that we've had so far is the creation of the Tourism Crisis Management Center, Resource Center. So this center houses more than 100 researchers, and these researchers come from the universities. Remember that the center is located in a university, leveraging on the strengths of a university. So we have plenty of human resource. So this human resource input into the center activities, give up-to-date daily updates on what's happening across the world in matters, tourism, and resilience. And this information is forwarded to the various heads of associations in the private sector, as well as the parastatals in the public sector. And this is around the 14 countries that the center is in charge of.
Thanks, Esther. Nikki, I want to ask you two things. First of all, you do a lot of work in the EU, and during the entire pandemic, a lot of countries, most of the countries had some kind of a furlough scheme or preservation of employment by giving the employees a part payment of their salary. The trouble was the policy did not make the difference, A, based on the sector, and we were the worst affected, and number two, it did not make the distinction based on giving more to those who earn the lowest. Some countries did, like Norway, but the vast majority didn't. What's your take? And also, what are you hoping to achieve with the center in the Balkans now?
Well, first of all, yes, the biggest challenge now with the pandemic is in the human resources, because tourism being most affected, unfortunately, created a lot of uncertainty in the people working in the sector, and some of them going online, offline, they even shift jobs, which now is very difficult for the companies to get people back, and they have to offer them different incentives and of course, education, which is crucial in order to offer a very good service, because in tourism it's all about people. When the pandemic started back in March 2020, I was a minister at that time, and the first thing we did was to directly support, with the help of the European Union, the tourism sector and the companies working for their personnel. The government was paying 80% grant to every employed person in the sector, and 20% were paid by the company itself for the salary of a person. Now, being an opposition in the parliament, actually now we have to discuss the budget for 2022, and yesterday before coming here I offered additional amount of 120 million for tourism sector till the end of the year, because the recovery is expected to start 23-24, but the personnel has to be preserved and kept. And with the Resilience Tourism Center on the Balkans, and I would like to thank Edmund and Taleb for the confidence given, we would like, together with the university, because the main partner is the University for World and National Economy, which is the best one in Sofia, for that having a variety of different subjects and professors, is to engage young people with that topic, that tourism is not only holiday or vacation, that tourism is economy, tourism is a sector who is creating a lot of and meaningful jobs, and we would like to engage people to think about and to empower women in particular, that they are capable to combine their family obligations and to lead whatever they want to as a goal, and in particular in tourism. So I really rely on the expertise, and I do believe that the center will function well, because we have already started a network with my colleagues from the neighborhood and all the Balkan countries, and I use the opportunity to invite you all in July, 7 and 8 of July. We are going to have investment tourism conference together with ITIC. Dr. Taleb Rifai, thank you for that, and we will expect Edmund, because we will open the center there.
Fantastic.
Yes,
thank you, Nikki. Catherine, can I bring you in at this point? I think, speaking about policy, so many of the policies in the space are still designed with a standard male in mind, or a male worker in mind. Now, this could be because perhaps women are not represented enough, which we know to be true in the decision-making center, and also because there is very limited gender-aggregated data. What is your view? You do tons of policy research for UNWTO and otherwise. What is your recommendation to solve this problem, so we don't just go back to doing what we do or we have done once we come out of the crisis?
Yeah, you're right in saying that we do not have enough sex disaggregated data, and that is a very highlighted and spotlighted theme across all issues on women in tourism. But also, Aradhana, we have a problem in the sense that people have this false notion of gender equality. So we conducted a study amongst top management executives in hospitality organizations across the world. And we found people saying things like, oh, we have 187 employees, for example, and 28% of these are females. I think that's pretty good for gender equality, don't you think? So we get a lot of comments like this, thinking that, you know, this is enough, and what they've done is really good. And this is coming from companies that have diversity councils in place, that sells the fact that they have gender equality statements. So here is the problem, and with that problem in mind, we need to have not just gender equality training, but gender awareness trainings amongst the people whom we have thought not needing it.
Fantastic. I'm getting cold stares from the organizers that we're running over time. Rika, I'm going to come to you next, if that's all right, and ask you very quickly. Of course, we need to change policies, but we also need to change the traditional mindsets of societies. Your take on it, what can we do? What's a good solution?
Yeah, that's totally right. We need to talk about mindset shifting along the society and the role of women and men. And you won't believe, but still in the northern countries, it's the same, like Catherine just said, you know, and these barriers are still existing. And so what we really need to do is to raise awareness. I totally agree. And we need to have sometimes even strong recruiting policies, which ask for a quota. I know that this has been discussed very heavily, because people say, well, if women are intelligent, they will be hired. But that's we all know that this is not the thing. You know, we need quotas in panels, in boards, in politics, even in community councils, because it's a matter of human rights that women have an equal chance, and they won't cross this. They won't bang against this glass ceiling if we don't change these policies. But also, it also is education everywhere in the society, in schools and daycare. You know, the books for little children, they have to change. They have to have different content where girls are not dressed in pink, for instance. I mean, they can be dressed in pink, but, you know, boys should be dressed in pink then too. So we really need to change the whole thinking of society. And this is also a part of the society, but of all the stakeholders, that the existing laws, which do exist for equality in most of the countries, that they will finally be executed. So we also need to work on our sons, not to make them machos.
It's a very good point. Speaking on that, Rika, last question to you, Liz, and then I will come to you, Yolanda, I haven't forgotten. Liz, you're big on innovation, and what Rika is talking about, equal opportunities. One of the things that women have suffered disproportionately in the last 2 years is women's entrepreneurship, funding, opportunities, as well as women-owned micro-enterprises, which is what Rika was alluding to earlier. How can we undo the regression? It's done, the damage is done, but how can we undo it?
Well, you know, studies have shown that loans have worked effectively when they're taken up by women entrepreneurs, because they're for multiple reasons. The family benefits, more of the community benefits, and they're more conscientious about earning the return and paying back the loan. And I think that finding opportunities to do that, but also encouraging women to step up and have more confidence about trying to be an entrepreneur. You know, in the startup world that I was in, you know, that was also part of the challenge. There were only about, I think the statistic is about 5% of women go for venture capital funding, and they only get 3% of the funding. But it's also because there's such a low proportion of them that are ready to take the risk and feel strong enough and confident enough to pursue their dream. So I think it's kind of a double-ended solution to that.
Thank you very much. Yolanda, you'll get the last question because I didn't come to you. I haven't forgotten. Don't worry. In 30 seconds, please, what would be your one ask from the sector?
More projects, hands-on projects, practical activities that foster women-related leadership and thought leadership.
Precisely spoken, very well done. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a wrap. I want to thank you all for being here. First of all, I want to thank all the wonderful women for bringing your passion, your courage, your drive. You're not just paving the path for yourselves, but for the women who are following behind you, so well done you. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank two men in specific, Minister Edmund Bartlett and Dr. Taleb Rifai. I know I wouldn't be here if it was not for them. I think that's true for a lot of people in the room, and we need more people to champion the cause for women as well. So thank you, gentlemen, for doing that. Finally, thank you for being a wonderful audience, and for all the media listening in. Ladies and gents, the future is female. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, thank you, Aradana, and all the other ladies, not only for bringing their intelligence, but also so much color to the stage. What a fantastic session. Okay, I know that we are running late, but I would just ask you to bear with us for a few more minutes, because we've got some really important announcements to make. Because in concluding today's forum, we want to demonstrate to you the action-based philosophy of the GTRCMC by introducing some of the key deliverables that are actually happening at this very moment. So the first of these actions is the announcement of a publication on resilience called Tourism, Resilience and Recovery for Global Sustainability and Development, Navigating COVID-19 and the Future, with a foreword by Dr. Rifai and the editing done by our own Professor Waller together with Minister Bartlett. Can I ask Minister Bartlett and Professor Waller to join me on stage, please? Sit by me. Just sit there. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so, Professor, while you're sitting down, I understand that you were one of the people behind this book. Can you just tell me a little bit about what motivated you and what your key messages are?
So, we've been doing some work on resilience for a while. And one of the things we realized was that there was no formal definition of resilience, neither in academia, trade magazines, or just blogs. And what did exist were descriptions, but nothing thoroughly deconstructing what resilience really is. And we came up with an idea of exploring different conceptualizations and understandings of resilience in the tourism space. And it started with that. And when we were finished with that, the next thing we started to discuss was looking at the future of the tourism space post-COVID. There are many new innovations that have manifested, many new ways of doing things as a result of COVID. And we just decided that we were going to engage persons who we knew were doing work on COVID-19 and tourism. So we brought together a fantastic set of contributors and economists working with the World Bank, IDB, sorry, Dr. Mooney, Professor Richard Bernal, who has been doing a lot of work on China and the future of China and tourism and how to get the Chinese market. We also spoke to two professors in the United States, United Kingdom, who are doing some work on digital transformation because we realized that the digital turn has created a space whereby digitalization is going to be the way forward for many persons in the space itself. And then we started to look at some critical issues like cybersecurity, cybercrime, women in the tourism space. So we literally have a compendium of the current and emerging issues in the tourism space, but more importantly, looking at how these issues kind of resonate around recovery and resilience and global sustainability in the tourism space.
Sounds like an amazing read. Minister Bartlett, what do you feel, how do you feel that the book will inspire change? I mean, what can it, in addition to what Professor Waller has just talked about, you know, how can it be used to really help us drive the message forward?
Well, I think part of the inspiration for this book was the work that we did in Jamaica in terms of responding to the challenge of the pandemic. And I think that you would see in it, particularly my own contribution, in terms of how we were first off the mark to identify that we had a crisis on hand.
Yeah.
As early as January in 2020, even before the World Bank declared a pandemic. So we established immediately a crisis management task force in January. And so by the announcement of the pandemic in March, we were ready to have a recovery task force. And out of that came a 385-page document on protocols. In fact, we submitted that to the WTTC, and Jamaica was given, in fact, the safe travel seal, and we were the third country in the world to receive that as a result of the work that we've done. We've gone to get consultancy with Pricewaterhouse, and with that we worked with our own government agency, the Tourism Development Company, and we created that. Then we went through to build capacity by training. We have the Jamaica Center for Tourism Innovation, and we started to train the workers who were furloughed or otherwise laid off. 20,000 workers were trained online with all the COVID protocols. We then went to provide COVID protective equipment and gears for the workers of the industry and a number of the small entrepreneurs like our craft vendors and our food and street food providers and so on. And then we went further to help the farmers who now had lost their income because the supplies to the hotels have been suspended as a result. So all of that is in the book when we look at immediate recognition of a pandemic, what it offered, and then capacity building to be able to cope with it. So the recovery program is a big part of what inspired this book.
Perfect. I mean, it sounds like a wonderful and very practical book, which is actually available on Amazon in the US, the UK, and the UAE. Moving on to the second action point of what the GCRMRC is doing, I'd like to invite Dr. Rifai back onto the stage, and also Nikki, who is missing, okay, who will also be joining us. We're going to talk a little bit now about, in more detail, about the new collaboration and the new centres that are opening. Taleb, if you'd like to take a seat, thank you very much. So to introduce this topic, Taleb, I'd like to ask you, as the co-chair of the council and of the centre, to share your thoughts on the centre's expansion strategy and the importance overall of these global partnerships. If you'd just like to do that sitting down, that's great.
Thank you so much, Daniela. Earlier I shared my background and my view of the work of the centre, and now I will elaborate on your question. We need to collaborate more than ever before. Governments are doing their best, but they're doing it alone. Governments are working alone. It's all in the hands of governments now. They're not cooperating. We need to have regional cooperation first, and then international cooperation. It's very important. Even in a place like Europe, which is very well established, multilateral system. You have 4 systems. One is lockdown, second is quarantine, the third is vaccination passport, and the fourth is testing, PRs. So we need to agree on one system and one system, only internationally. That's the only way that we can recover the tourism industry. We have to put the multilateral system at a test. The multilateral system is not operating well at all. United Nations is not operating well. The EU is not operating well. United States of America is not united anymore. Divided States of America. Each state has its own system. You can't travel from one place to another if you're not having a unified system. That's very, very important. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Rifai, for those very practical words. Minister Bartlett, I think you have some announcements to make about some immediate agreements which we're going to be announcing and sharing today.
Right.
Would you like to come to the stage, or would you like to stay where you are?
So I could stay here.
Sure, please do.
Thank you. It's easy. Now, the center has been expanding, and we have, since the inauguration of the East Africa Center at the Kenyatta University in Nairobi, been working with a number of countries to establish centers. And we're very pleased that out of all of those discussions are now emerging concrete decisions with regards to MOUs that have been developed and are ready for execution. Today, we will have 2 such executions. The George Brown University in Toronto for Canada and North America, and the Bulgarian MOU, which will deal with the Baltics overall. Then on Saturday, we travel to Jordan, and on Sunday, we will inaugurate the Taleb Rifai Global Tourism and Crisis Management Center there. Then, of course, Botswana is on, Namibia is on, Nigeria is on, and Ghana is on. Greece is next in line, and we are working with Sevilla in Spain for a university there that we have been tidying up arrangements with. I just want to indicate that it is intended to have 12 countries brought on board within the next 6 months. So when we go to Sofia in July, we would have had 12
countries.
Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center in 12 countries across the world.
Well, that's an amazing achievement, and we're going to share some messages now to mark this very important development. We'll start with the video from our Canadian partner.
I'm Dr. Gervin Ferron, President of George Brown College here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. It is my honor to be joining the Honorable Edmund Bartlett, Minister of Tourism for Jamaica, in signing this important Memorandum of Understanding. As President of George Brown College, it is my pleasure to sign the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center Agreement with the University of the West Indies for the establishment of the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center at George Brown College. In Canada, tourism and resiliency is important and represent a key focus of George Brown College. We are therefore very pleased to be signing this important agreement today, and we look forward to the partnership and the work that will be done at a global level. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. And now on to Bulgaria. You've already been introduced to Nikki, so I won't introduce her again, but she has been the key driver of the partnership with the University of National World Economy and the Association for Economic Development and Tourism in Bulgaria. And I'd like to invite her and Minister Bartlett just to stand at the front of the stage and shake hands for a photo opportunity to mark this special occasion.
And to let you know that this is a document. So, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
and
you.
in July, we will go to Sofia to do the actual launch of the center.
Thank you. I would like to thank you, Edmund, for the confidence given to Bulgaria to be the leading power for the Balkans. And I would like to use the opportunity to thank the rector and the deputy rector of the University for World and National Economy in Sofia for being so engaged. And actually, we had one Zoom call with Edmund 2 weeks ago, and today the agreement is in fact signed. And we have a long journey ahead to work together, and I'm sure that when we inaugurate the opening in July, we will have a lot to share. And this is really great initiative. And thank you, Edmund, and thank you, Dr. Rifai, for the engagement, because we shouldn't allow to be surprised anymore with this Global Resilience Tourism and Crisis Management Center. I think we will be able to address better any future challenge that we faced with the pandemic, and this is how we're gonna keep tourism sector moving, and in particular people working in it. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you very much, Nikki.
Thank you so much, Nikki and Minister Bartlett. And we now have a message from Professor Salem Al-Mahadin, who is the president of the Middle East University in Amman, Jordan, who could unfortunately not be with us today, but we will be signing the actual declaration with him on this Sunday. So please play that video for us.
On behalf of Middle East University in Jordan, I'm very pleased to have been invited to speak at the Global Tourism Resilience Forum, and sorry I can't be with you in person in Dubai. The global situation has forced all of us to examine how we live, study, produce, and execute tasks at home, school, and work. In the light of this focus, preparedness in crisis management best practices have come into clear view. Research, data analysis, and academic rigor are the keys to building societies and business in the development of plans based on accurate forecasting that will minimize impact when disruptions occur. Insulation against cultural breakdown and economic strain must constantly be reviewed and adjusted. These plans then require implementation, without which we are doomed. Witness the fact that we should have all been better prepared for the recent pandemic. Academics and scientists had warned us in advance, but there was no collective acceptance. Through our universities, we must develop models and communicate on a much broader scale. This is why we at MEU are enthusiastic and dedicated to the mission of Minister Bartlett's centers, and hence the pride at being selected to anchor these activities for the MENA region here in Amman. Dr. Taleb Rifai will be the namesake of the center, which we believe indicates the international view the center will maintain, just as Dr. Rifai did during his 40-year career. We at MEU pride ourselves on the highest standards of education and draw students from across the region. Through our partnering with the GTRCM, we will expand our academic offering and increase our international exposure to draw outstanding professors and students alike. The university will host Taleb Rifai Center for Resilience in Crisis Management. Strive to constantly deliver an academically rigorous environment that will identify solutions and communicate widely. The university will seek funding to conduct research and develop policies in tourism resilience and crisis management, provide capacity building for the tourism sector as well as any related sectors, and create toolkits and guidelines on tourism resilience and crisis management. It will also utilize its professional relations with other universities across the region and beyond to establish bilateral and multilateral projects and exchange programs. MEU will provide printed, electronic, and audiovisual communications and advocacy for the Centre's programs and projects as needed. We are able to be ambitious in our goals, partly due to Jordan's stability as well as its unique placement in the world and the MENA region. This stability allows the hosting of such an important centre. Add to that, tourism is Jordan's largest export sector, its second largest private sector employer, and its second highest producer of foreign exchange, and accounts for approximately 10% of the country's domestic product. The MENA region comprises very diverse cultures and geographies, and this ultimately makes it one of the liveliest tourism regions. In closing, I would like to congratulate Minister Bartlett and his team on the launch of the campaign to establish February 17th as Global Tourism Resilience Day. This is a brilliant means in which to keep the spotlight on planning and crisis management annually. With initiatives like the GTRCM and the Resilience Day campaign, collectively we will all lift up each other to ensure risks from disruptions are minimized. Thank you very much.
What a wonderful message. Before we move on to the final action, Professor Waller, did you want to say anything more about the expansion of the centres, or have we covered those?
Well, it was already established that we are also setting up centres in Barbados and Ghana as well.
And Bahamas.
And the Bahamas. So I just wanted to, but that is for the end of this year.
Yeah. Right. Okay, fantastic. Well, sounds like you're going to have a very busy time with you and your teams. And so that brings me on to the announcement of action number 3, maybe the most important action we're going to be talking about today. And I'm going to ask Minister Bartlett to rejoin me here at the podium to share your vision of the creation of an annual day of honour, February the 17th being the Global Tourism Resilience Day. You mentioned at the opening of the forum the letter you've received from the Deputy Secretary-General of the UNWTO, and I'd like you to hear the thoughts that you're going to share with us.
Thank you very much, and I think we'll be very brief on this one because we've spent a lot of time today really talking about the vision, the mission, and indeed the action that we want to pursue to build that capacity across the world for greater appreciation of the need to prepare and to prepare well for disruptions and to manage the disruptions when they come, and most importantly, to recover fast and to thrive. And we want to focus on thriving because that's what enables well-being and brings the whole face of newer and brighter future for the young people of the world. One big example that we have of how unfortunate receding is for countries with least capacity for recovery is our neighbor Haiti. And we're not making heavy weather of that wonderful country in this regard, except to indicate that we know that the need to make other countries grow with us in recovery is born out of the capacity to do it. And I'm insisting that we will. I'm very delighted that we have had cooperation and support from so many entities across the world that it really makes the point for us that we are doing the right thing. And I want to read a particular endorsement that came from the United Nations, the Secretariat, and this particular one makes the point very well. And it reads, Excellency, thank you for your joint letter dated 24 January 22, in which you invite the Secretary-General to deliver a message of endorsement of the Tourism Resilience for Global Sustainability Forum to be held on the 17th of February 22 at the Dubai Expo 2020. As rightfully mentioned in your letter, the 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic invite us to reflect upon the future of the tourism industry, its resilience, and emerging challenges. I take the opportunity to congratulate you for the efforts the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center is carrying out in this regard. We must rebuild the tourism sector with sustainability as an essential objective while preparing for future crises. To aid the recovery of the tourism sector from the pandemic, the Secretary-General has urged building resilience across the entire tourism value chain as a priority area to be considered in the COVID-19 recovery plan. This means supporting the millions of livelihoods that depend on tourism and building a sustainable and responsible travel experience that is safe for host communities, workers, and travelers. I would like to suggest that you share the outcomes of the forum with the World Travel Tourism Organization so that it can inform the work of the United Nations system and the discussions around risk and resilience that the Secretary-General has put forth in his recent report entitled Our Common Agenda. The Secretary-General and I wish you success on the Tourism Resilience for Global Sustainability Forum at the Dubai Expo, and in your efforts to ensure tourism regains its position in driving sustainable and inclusive growth. And it's signed by the Deputy Secretary General Amina J. Mohammed on behalf of the Secretary General. And I think that this is a very strong admonition and it has indeed set the tone and given us a mandate. There are scores of other partners that we're hoping would have been on screen so that you could see. Over 35 organizations and institutions across the world have indicated and sent their endorsement for the day. So the next phase, which will be a very brief one also, will indicate a declaration of intent, which we hope to be part of the guiding principles that will carry us forward in this great campaign, which begins today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Minister Bartlett. And now, in order to mark this important initiative, I'd like to invite some additional people up onto the stage who've been very important in formulating the work that's already been taking place. If I could ask Honourable Najib Balala to come and join us again, and also the Senator, the Honourable Lisa Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of Jamaica, if she's in the room. Also Aradana, please come and join us on the stage. Professor Esther Kaguri Munieri, who's also been with us before, the Executive Director of GTRCM for East Africa, Mr. Graham Cook, founder of the World Group, Gerald Lawless, who needs no introduction, Ambassador of WTTC and Director of ITIC, and Ibrahim Ayub, the Group CEO of ITIC, also joining us. And then joining us virtually, we have Dr. Abu Ghazaleh from Jordan, Liz Ortiguera from PATA in Singapore, Professor Salam Al-Mahadin from Amman, and Laurie Myers from the Resilience Council based in Athens. If we can all just line up, we can have a photo.
Yes. You're on air, supposed to do this.
Let's do the photo first, and then you. Okay.
You guys just join.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm now going to ask Professor Waller to read the declaration.
I think Minister said both of us.
Sorry?
You read one and I read one. Okay.
You don't. I haven't seen it. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're going to read them para by para.
We're not going to read the whole.
You will read the para with me.
But of course.
Kenya will host. Kenya will host 2024.
It's a question as well.
Range of preamble to the declaration. So we're going to spare you the preamble and get straight into the declaration. And so the declaration reads, I strongly recommend, we agree, this forum agrees, that we strongly recommend a special forum.
Preamble is very long.
Yes, and I told him we're not using the preamble. Long. Okay, so let's get on with it. So we start again, the abbreviated version. Having heard from the presenters at the forum regarding best practices, case studies on preparedness, investment strategies driven by resilience, and the power of action by women, the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center has agreed that 1, we strongly recommend a special day for tourism resilience to be observed worldwide. February 17 has been identified as the proposed day and should be called Global Tourism Resilience Day beginning today.
We opine that Tourism Resilience Day and the activities leading up to the day will contribute to expanding the range of awareness and access across that destinations will have regarding tourism resilience policies, methodologies, frameworks, strategies, and approaches through a network of tourism stakeholders who will collectively raise awareness, build capacity, and advocate for the application of tourism resilience to destination management.
It calls on the worldwide tourism industry to urgently adopt a methodological I'll go again. It calls on the worldwide tourism industry to urgently adopt a methodological, collaborative, and institutional approach towards resilience building. Indeed, in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, the attitude towards resilient building among tourism stakeholders can no longer be discretionary. Resilience building has become the most important catalyst of the survival of the tourism sector during this period.
Governments, local authorities, the private sector, the academy, and the international development partners must work together to, 1, build capacities to identify, track, mitigate, manage existing and future threats to the global tourism space and agree on mitigation strategies through a worldwide network of international tourism partners. 2, encourage the development of innovations to manage and measure tourism resilience between and among countries. And 3, advocate for the inclusion of tourism resilience training and capacity building in tourism educational institutions globally in all aspects of the tourism ecosystems.
Appeals to national government, local authorities, private sector, financing institutions, and relevant stakeholders to provide support for funding global tourism resilience initiatives
should have touched it. I was trying to help out the situation. All right, go ahead. Better. Much better.
Yeah. Sorry about this. It's the professor's touch. Appeals to national governments, local authorities, private sector, financing institutions, and relevant stakeholders to provide support for funding global tourism resilience initiatives to help in the mitigation of threats to the industry through a global tourism resilience fund.
We invite donors. So we invite the donor community to recognize the importance of global tourism as a catalyst for development and tourism resilience as an essential mechanism for global sustainability. We advocate for a wider and deeper understanding and efforts towards the coordination and mobilization of resources for tourism resilience through existing international financial mechanisms as well as new financial facilities related to the Sustainable Development Goals, including the UNWTO and the WTTC.
Invites the donor communities to recommends that the Tourism Global Resilience and Crisis Management Center expands its global leadership through satellite centers in vulnerable regions of the world and later to every country, as well as to collaborate with other key global gatekeepers of tourism to enhance resilience and sustainability in securing the future well-being of all in an equitable and inclusive partnership. Requests that the UNWTO member states, affiliate members, and other international organizations and private sector partners to advocate for the inclusion of tourism resilience policies, methodologies, framework, strategies for global sustainability to be included in all aspects of the tourism ecosystem.
And finally, to encourage the global, the declaration encourages the global acknowledgement that the GTRCMC has made to global sustainability through its tourism resilience efforts, and further recommends the renaming of the headquarters of the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center at the University of the West Indies to include the name Edmund Bartlett to demonstrate our appreciation of his great work and all that he has done during the pandemic as it relates to building resilience and moving destinations from surviving to thriving. That's the last one. So we, I think you should already say.
Yeah. And finally, I would like to use the opportunity to extend our heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of the victims that have been affected by COVID-19 pandemic. It has been a painful moment for all of us in tourism. We've lost lives, and we say in our good tradition, may their souls rest in peace and light eternal shine on them. Amen. So we'll now observe a minute's silence for all the departed ones from this pandemic.
Okay, We have, as Minister Bartlett said, there are over 35 organizations that have already supported this. We did receive some video messages, but we really have run out of time. We had messages from the Organization of American States, the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, and 35 other organizations. And we will be sharing those messages as we move forward with this program. But for the time being, I'd just like to
beg you to please bear with us for especially the OAS message.
Okay.
The message from the Secretary-General of the Organization of American States is a very important one that I ask you to just bear with us a little. I know we're behind in time, but please let's have that one. And the Caribbean Hotel and Tourist Association.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm honored, on behalf of the OES, to endorse Global Tourism Resilience Day, scheduled to take place in a year's time. I also congratulate the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center and its partners for organizing the Tourism Resilience for Global Sustainability Forum. The focus of the forum on building the capacity of countries to respond to international shocks and to predict with greater certainty their responses is central to better managing and recovering from such events. As the world seeks to recover from the effects of the pandemic, promoting the tourism sector resilience and improving its capacity to deliver more benefits to more communities becomes even more important. Forging multi-sectoral partnerships will be critical to this effort and will strengthen the tourism sector capacity to generate more opportunities for inclusive growth. This will require collaboration among governments, thought leaders and industry experts to enhance tourist resilience through innovative solutions. The OES is ready to play its part. The issue of tourist resilience is critical to the countries of the Americas. Before the pandemic in 2019, the contribution of travel and tourism to GDP in the Americas was 8.8%. In this context, building consensus for coordinating actions among countries to strengthen resilience and ensure that the tourism recovery is robust and sustained is imperative. The work of the Inter-American Committee on Tourism under the leadership of the Minister of Tourism of Jamaica, the Honorable Edmund Bartlett, will be key to driving this process among the OES member states. The OES is therefore pleased to be associated with other tourism stakeholders in joining forces for the world's first Global Resilience Day in 2023. I once again endorse and pledge our support for this effort and wish you great success with the Tourism Resilience for Global Sustainability Forum. Thank you.
Greetings. This is Nicola Madden-Gregg, President of the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association. I am truly pleased to endorse the Tourism Resilience for Global Sustainability Forum and the move towards creating a Global Tourism Resilient Day. The past 2 years, if nothing else, has taught us the value of working together to overcome the most difficult odds. It has reinforced the right of the collective might. The recognition that resilience must not only focus on climate, but take into the full scope of resilience, including security, pandemic preparedness, entrepreneurial and digital preparedness, will be key to sustaining a new global tourism and indeed a new Caribbean tourism. We at the CHTA have also begun to pivot and focus not only on the business of tourism, but the future of tourism along the lines to reimagine and transform this industry to meet the current and future challenges and opportunities. We stand ready to work in partnership with the Global Tourism Resilience Network and other key stakeholders as we chart a new course for tourism. Our accumulated efforts, thoughts, ideas, and knowledge can forge a more responsive sector that is capable of not just responding to a crisis, but predicting any potential crisis and mitigating against its most serious effects. All destinations must utilize the collective knowledge and experience to build new skills and knowledge for anticipation, for human capital development, infrastructure planning, policy implementation and management, for response protocols, and for managing through the crisis and having effective recovery strategies for these disruptive events. While the current pandemic centered around a health crisis, new disruptions may take less familiar forms, such as cybersecurity issues and other less obvious challenges. We wholeheartedly endorse this effort and wish for a successful conference as we work to build a globally resilient industry ready for tomorrow's challenges.
Okay, and now for the final wrap-up, I'd like to invite Minister Bartlett back onto the stage and also Gerald Lawless. And Ibrahim, because that was what was just to do the thank yous and the closing.
So, can we all come together? Thank yous are vital because they express not just appreciation, but they express the feelings of the heart, the real feelings of the heart. And as the idea of this Global Resilience Day emerged, it actually began right here in Dubai with a discussion I had with Graham Cook, the chairman and owner of World Travel Awards. Well done, Graham. And Graham, who is Ideas Factory, immediately said to me, yes, let's do it. And after that, I called one Dr. Taleb Rifai. And I said, yes, we are going to do it. And he said, of course. And then he called one Ibrahim Yaqub from ITIC. And Ibrahim said, we must call Gerald Lawless. So we called Gerald Lawless. And then I called Professor Waller. And I said, Professor Waller, we have a job to do at Expo 2020. And he said, okay, you're the boss, you say it, let's do it. And the next person to call was Anna K. Newell, who is the Director for International Relations at the center. And then we called one Najib Balala in Nairobi, the Minister of Tourism and Wildlife. And we said Jamaica and Kenya are joined at the hip. And we are the two drivers of global tourism resilience. And so he said the next person he must call is Dr. Miru. Please come forward. Because she is the driver of the center in Nairobi. And I must tell you, Kenyatta University has given us a standard of performance that is truly emulable. And it is my view that we are going to hold up the performance of that university's center for guidance of all the other centers that are being established in the world. And I really want to say that to you from the bottom of my heart, because you've done extremely well. We're proud of you in Kenya. Thank you very much. So this team brought together some partners, and Dubai World is indeed the principal partner in this. Dubai Port World, and I want to specially thank the Sultan and the entire team from Dubai Port World for making these facilities available to us and all the technology involved, and they have done it as a gesture of goodwill. Sandals International for their support, PATA for their support, of course, the Bahia Principe and the GMC, who are investors and hoteliers in our space. The Global Tourism Resilience Council, and I want to spend a second, if you will, on the council because Daniela saw me in Madrid at Fitur, and she said, yes, we're doing it. And in 2 minutes, she had Laurie Myers on the team, and Laurie worked night and day to make this thing possible. So in 3 weeks, ladies and gentlemen, in 3 weeks, we conceptualized and developed a plan of action that resulted in the launch today of the first ever Global Tourism Resilience Day. Have I left out anybody else? Alicia Bethune. Where is Alicia? She perhaps is still working. But she has worked so hard with ITIC. And, you know, I think these, yes, we did. GMC. Oh, I am told that I said GMC hotels, but it's really MGM hotels. So I couldn't live down that. I would never be forgiven. MGM hotels. Thank you. See why Anna K is so important to us. So Laurie, Ibrahim, Gerald, Anna K, Alicia, the East African group, Graham Cook, Dr. Rifai. And where is Essie Gardner? She's still at the Jamaica Pavilion.
Still working.
So she's still working. And Essie, I just want you to know your ears are not ringing in vain. It's because we truly appreciate the work that you've done here to put things together. And so, congratulations to all, and thanks to the speakers. When we asked, we had not a single speaker saying no. What we had were speakers saying, I can't do it virtually. I refuse to do it virtually. And those speakers who have been here present with us, I'd like them to stand because it's an act of love and great sacrifice on their part to be here, and they are here at their own expenses. And then, of course, those who join us virtually, a special round of applause also for them. Thank you for our audience. Thanks to the media who supported us throughout. Thank you all for helping us to create this historic moment and to give the great industry. No, I didn't see my Minister of Foreign Affairs stand. Did I see her stand? No, I didn't see her stand, and I can't, I have to see her. Would you please stand and join with us, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Jamaica, and the team from Jamaica that came here, Ambassador Stone Roof, and the full team. Thank you so much. Oh yes, and of course, the President of JAMPRO, who is here, Diana Edwards, and the whole team. Thank you all. Oh, my God. The Director of Tourism, Donovan White. If I go on anymore, you won't leave here. So enjoy. God bless you. Have a great evening, and join us in the annex for a social hour. Thank you.